William kicks on back. So good. It's like, why didn't you always say mine?
Yeah, I know.
Wake up, buddy. Somebody's gonna say something to you.
Do you think you'll vote on it? If you do, okay, that's fine. Whatever it is. Yeah, that's fine.
It's good work.
Always do. That's when you started in question format.
I was hoping yours was good.
Yeah.
I was gonna just the one is what I was gonna mention.
Sorry, I couldn't see it.
Yeah.
What's that?
I know.
Well, have you had time to compare the numbers and everything to see if this happens?
Insurance partners, are they gonna be here tonight?
The one gal, Crystal.
Okay, I just didn't see her.
Yeah, she's right.
Okay.
Are you ready to vote?
Do you need to sign that?
I don't know if we do it.
Do we hold off on signing that?
Yeah, we
paper?
could probably Friday evening.
James
Give us
just
some
said
time to look
that
at.
he's gonna go ahead.
Oh, there was so many numbers there that saving some money there. There was all this stuff in red and black. I was just trying to figure out what I
Taking it easy on you.
But I was really wanting to sit down and set or something, or even Tracy. So yeah, I would like to. Well, hold up.
Go ahead and call the USD 49 Board of Education work session for Monday, April 13th, 2015 to order. And the first item on the agenda is agenda topics. Do you want to review those?
Yes, I do have one thing I want to mention under the personnel transactions. We will have a recommendation for the middle school assistant principal position, and that will be Shauna Zweifel. I got it now. And we'll be posting her position then after that, but that'll be on the consent agenda for the next meeting. And then also, if you look at item G and its approval of the amended minutes for 2/16/2015, as we were going through the fee structures and looking, the minutes did not reflect what was voted on or what was approved. We made several motions at that meeting, and option one, this has to do with summer school fees. And option one is what was voted on and passed 4-2, and that was a $100 fee across the board. So that'll be on the consent agenda to amend the minutes to reflect that it was option one that was voted on or passed and not option five. So I wanted to bring that to your attention. I don't have anything else on the consent agenda to mention.
Okay. Go ahead and move into the discussion topics then, which would be the Hayes High Athletic Booster Club presentation. Do you want to introduce that?
Sure,
David?
John and Dustin, if you guys want to come up and we'll do your presentation. And thank you for being here.
Thank you all very much for allowing us to come in and give you a little bit of information about the Hayes High Athletic Booster Club. My name is John Armstrong. I'm a member of the Booster Club.
And I'm Dustin Slafley. I'm also a member of the Booster Club 3 years now and actually serving as president this year.
What we felt like was a good situation for us to do is bring attention to what's going on at Hayes High School from an athletic booster club standpoint. I understand it's been since 2009 that this type of information has been presented to the board. So we felt like this was a good time to bring some information to you all so you're aware of what's gone on over the past 60 years and even prior to that if you were unaware of some of the things that the Booster Club has done over the years. Whoops, I went the wrong way. Am I going up or down here, I guess? I'm moving over and I'll let you maybe. After our introductions of us, Mr. Haynes, Brian Haynes, was not able to make it this evening. He originally was going to come with us and help present some of the information. The compromise part of the board is we have 20 couples that comprise our board that we meet. Of those, 140 families are members of our booster club. Just to give you an idea, this is the purpose for the Hayes High Athletic Booster Club, to support Hayes High Athletics. We are proud of our organization and the fact that all the revenue raised goes back into our athletic programs to help assure a fun and positive experience for Hayes High School and our student athletes. We have a little bit of information we'd like to talk to you about as well.
All right, so talking a little bit about the fundraising activities, some of you are business owners, and it probably hurts from some of us in the past getting asked for money. So probably the biggest fundraiser that we do has been going on for several years. I'm going to talk about a couple of them, but Football Frenzy, that's one of the big ones that we do. Football Frenzy is actually a combined effort that we do in combination with vocal music and also the Athletic Booster Board. This past year, if you're not familiar with Football Frenzy, it's basically it's an NFL pick'em type of thing where you get a ticket. The money then goes back to several winners each week. This year, actually, in the 2014-15 year, we actually raised $40,000 with the Football Frenzy, and then that gets split, so $20,000 each to the vocal music and the athletic boosters. Concessions is another big thing that we spend a lot of time on. Regional wrestling was actually something great for us this year. We haven't had that for several years, so we were actually able to do the wrestling tournament this year. We actually raised about $7,000 with regional wrestling. Every year we do the city shootout, and we also do the Bob Coon Classic Wrestling Tournament. One of the other things we do also is merchandise sales throughout the year. Before the football games, some of the basketball games, we have a booth set up outside of the games so fans can buy apparel, Hayes High apparel. Another thing that we started several years ago was the car raffle. It was actually started by Dick Worth, who donates a car to us. We actually do that every other year, so last year was the year that we did that. We won't be doing that this year. Last year we raised about $8,800 with that fundraiser. So as you can see, we're putting a lot of time and effort, and we actually raise a lot of money each year that actually goes back to the Hayes High Athletic Department or the athletes at Hayes High. As far as looking at past history, like John said, the last time the group was here to talk in 2009, so we expanded this slide a little bit. This was a slide that was shown then. So in the last 12 years, the Booster Club has raised about $400,000, $392,000 that's been given back to Hayes High Athletics for funding various things. That's about $33,000 a year. On the next slide, I'm going to kind of explain a little bit kind of the process. And Chris is here, that's good, so if there's any questions, he can help answer them. But basically, the coaches and the athletic director every year at Hayes High work together to partner together to basically come up with what's called a wish list, which is basically, all the things that the coaches need for the sporting events the next year, whether it could be, baseballs or new golf balls or uniforms or whatever it could be. They work together and put together an entire list. This year, the list comprised of about 25 line items, I think, which is about $32,000 this year is what it came out to. And then what we could actually fund this year was $25,000 is what we're funding, which will actually technically be spent next year over the summer as they prepare for next year's school year. But if you look through the list, this is very common for most years, cross-country uniforms, girls' basketball uniforms, baseball uniforms, all kinds of different things that they need to compete in those athletic events. Another thing that some of our funding goes through every year as well too, that's comprised in some of those total dollar amounts that you see on there. It's not just the wish list. We actually help with the athletic banquet every year. The Booster Club also helps put on the Maroon and Gold sporting kickoff each fall. And then a lot of the athletes that go to state, cross-country or state track, the Athletic Booster Club has actually been paying for all those hotel rooms as well, too. And I will turn it back over to John.
So this term, concerns with pay-to-play, seems to be a common term that's been tossed around numerous occasions, not only in the past, but here in the near future. We totally understand that there are hard decisions that are coming. We understand and keep abreast as much as we can to try and show that concern to our parents of what's going on in the state of Kansas and how your all's hands basically are kind of the cards you're dealing with are the ones you have to play with, and we get that. The pay-to-play situation, just some concerns that we've talked about within the Booster Club. Understanding it's not a done deal, but we also want to bring this type of information forward because that's been the common term that seems to come up here and there again. And with the change in this time of year, whether it's this year or in 2 years or in 10 years of the board transition, we felt like the board consisting of the current board and the board that will be in the near future, that this is a great time for us to bring some of this terminology up from a Booster Club standpoint. We realize that parents already feel like they have the perception that they are paying to play. Whether it be in a certain situation, there's some examples of the gold card in football. It's almost one of those things where, guess what, buddy? You get to have 20 of these gold cards and you either sell them or you write a check. Those are the types of things that our students are already doing, and you've probably bought gold cards before from a football player, or you've bought a taco shop card from a student that's playing baseball. Papa Murphy's was a recent fundraising organization for the soccer team, as well as the car washers for track. Those are certain little examples. We spent what was to be 8 hours turned into about 10 or 12 hours at Hayes Medical Center last summer, and about a 40 straight north wind for the Hayes Medical Center, which was an awesome opportunity for a couple of different sports to join together and help out the Hayes Medical Center for their appreciation for their employees there as well. A couple other concerns we talked about was we feel like that if that comes across, that we would have less participation from our students that want to participate in athletics. Now that if that situation does come up, the parental support would eventually then at that time be a little bit lower than what we would with if they didn't have to pay to play, as well as buying products. When we go out and we talk to our businesses that really support Hayes High School and Hayes High School athletics, that if their son or daughter or someone is paying to play, then that side of what they're doing would come down, and we wouldn't be able to do what we're doing with the $30,000 or $40,000 per year for the wish list and other entities if our teams does make it to a state tournament, paying for those types of hotels, as well as just the community and business support and coaching challenges. We all know that some of our budgets from line items, looking from one sport to the other, is not similar to what other schools, and we're competing within our conference or even outside of our conference. And that is hard to attract coaches to a district if we're not having that type of support, whether it's on a budget or a strong Hayes High Athletic Booster Club like we have right now. We feel like we have one of the strongest booster clubs in the state of Kansas, to be honest with you, and we couldn't do it without your support and the community support and the business support that we already have. That's really all the information we wanted to bring forward. If you all have any questions, we're definitely here at this time if you have any. If not, we appreciate the fact that you allowed us to come and visit with you and talk about some of these things that we've been working on over the past 4 and 5 and 6 years, and we're open to any suggestions you may have in the future. Is there any questions from the board at all?
The specific team fundraising, like the gold cards and the taco shop cards, that's separate from what the boosters have raised to 32,000?
Correct.
Okay.
Typically what happens is those students are given those cards in the beginning of the year, and this is our fundraiser. That's basically their budget. So if they need to sell 100 taco shop cards, and that money would come back to that specific team for them to purchase what they need throughout the year.
And the way I understand it, Our line item budgets per sport, we all know they're very low. If it wasn't for the Booster Club, there wouldn't be uniforms, there wouldn't be additional equipment. We wouldn't be able to, hell, even get into some tournaments on occasion because we have such low line items, we couldn't afford the entry fees for them. Is that an accurate understanding?
Correct?
That's my understanding. I looked at the budget, I guess, a couple weeks ago, and my understanding from looking at it is primarily, the budget is primarily paying for coaching expenses and travel, it looked like to me.
Yeah, I think the baseball budget, you couldn't even buy all the balls
Correct.
that needed just for a season. Thank you for what you guys do.
Thank you.
You bet. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
The next item then is, we have pay-to-play discussion, but Bruce and Chris, if you guys want to come up and we'll kind of continue this conversation, and a lot of the things that they've mentioned, I think there's some facts and figures that will help explain some of that.
I just want to add, I'm Chris Michaelis, by the way, athletic director there at Hayes High. Just wanted to add, I went back and figured fundraising, what our coaches did. This does not include what the Booster Club has done for us this year. And so far this year, we've raised or have donated equivalently to over $100,000 that our teams have raised with that. And just again, a basic breakdown, I'll throw football out there. They've raised over $24,000 this year to have that program. And not only is it the kids, but it's also the parents. And it's also the businesses. And I really think that's a substantial amount of money that our kids raise and our families raise here at Hayes High. And what it told me was that our community supports our programs. They're behind it 100%. I think it's important for kids. And that's, I say that just by the donations or fundraising that just our teams do to make things work. And so that's phenomenal, and I guess this is a good time for me to say thank you to those businesses, thank you to those community leaders that continue to support our athletic programs at Hayes High and at the middle school as well.
Just a couple things. We don't have a booster club mainly for two reasons. One, we don't want to step on the high school's feet because we felt like if we had a sports booster club, it would take away from their needs, and their needs are quite a bit greater than ours because of the amount of sports they have. We do still go out and get donations. This year we got 2 brand new scoreboards from 2 businesses. We got a new gym divider curtain for $14,000, so just those 2 products saved the district $27,000. We also have small team fundraisers. We do sell kind of a dual purpose thing. We sell Fort Hays State football tickets for one game, the tailgate game each year that raises a little over $2,000 for our football programs. And both our boys and girls basketball teams also sell Fort Hays State University basketball tickets. And that's kind of 2 reasons. One, Fort Hays is very good about letting us use our facilities. This weekend we hosted a track meet. They didn't charge us for that. Last week we hosted a tennis meet out there. They didn't charge us for that. Because we feel like we're doing a service by selling tickets for them, getting more people to attend their ball games, and also allows us to make a little bit of money to help pay for some of the needs that we have. We have continued needs, obviously. The track is obviously the biggest one right now for me. I've struck out twice in the last couple weeks with donations there, but it's a little harder asking for $500,000 versus a couple hundred, couple thousand. So it's something we continue to work at. Our coaches know that going in that they're going to have to help raise money for their programs, and they accept that. They realize it's a challenge, but they know with the budgets being the way they are today, that's something they expect to have to do, and they're okay with that just because we're kind of used to it. So that's all I got.
Shannon, do you want to pull up this one again, and I'll kind of go through that? This sheet shows last year's fundraising, and Chris said some of it isn't on there. I think Bruce had 25,000 additional donations this year. I know the $5,000 scoreboard isn't on here from the high school, but you can see what the district pays at the very top. This is what we paid last year, the $563,000. And coaches, officials, transportation, supplies, leases, those things. And then right underneath it, it has what the high school, through their carryover balance, donations, fundraisers from parents, Booster Club contributions, and gate receipts is $321,000. And right below that then is the middle school from same things, carryovers, donations, and again, they have more than what's listed on this from last year, fundraisers of parents, and then gate receipts. And off to the right side then, where it has $25 pay to participate fee, what we did, or Chris did this, put together the spreadsheet, or a spreadsheet, and took the number of participants in just the athletic sports, not forensics, debate, music, any of those. And if we assessed a $25 pay to participate fee, the high school would generate $14,700. The middle school would generate $12,400. We currently charge a $50 activity fee across the board. Everybody benefits from that, music, forensics, debate. Marty, am I forgetting some other big things? I mean, even the kids that go to the games, they don't pay to get in if they have their card. But everybody benefits from that, and you can see we collect $24,600 from the high school and $25,200 from the middle school this year. So roughly $50,000 from that. We would have to charge $50 for just the athletes to generate roughly the same amount of money. Again, I would like to leave it the way we have it, where everybody pays $50, or not have it at all. But I know we run into the things about what do we want to give up then, but everybody pays that fee. I think to say that we're just going to charge the athletics the nightmare of the bookkeeping, and Danielle had some good questions earlier today about, does everybody pay up front? And then if a student doesn't make the team or quits, the paperwork trying to track who gets a refund, who doesn't, and just, I mean, it's going to take a lot of work, and you figure man hours in there, and it's probably going to cost more than it would be worth than just to charge everyone the $50. I know we had a long conversation about this, guys. What else do you want to share with that piece of it?
Dean, can I ask on this sheet, so our total district cost is the 563,
Correct.
and then we're saying for last year, we fundraised 404,000?
Yes.
I mean, with the carryover.
Yeah.
Meaning our total out-of-pocket expense was $159,000, or?
To
No,
provide
our
sports?
expense is the 563.
Total out-of-pocket spend.
Okay, because that money goes back to the programs, but doesn't necessarily cover the coaches and the transportation and our line
They buy
items.
the supplies, and they gave some examples of what all they do, uniforms, a lot of lodging, those types of things.
How are other 4A schools in that, how are they doing pay-to-play and different things like that?
Currently in the Western Athletic Conference, no other school charges a pay-to-play fee. Great Bend, Liberal, Garden, Dodge, none of them have pay-to-play.
How about outside of that, the state?
I've contacted some other 4A schools. Some of them have paid to participate, some of them don't. Like McPherson, they do.
McPherson has it at the high school and middle school level, and Salina also has both middle schools and high school. The middle schools charge a flat fee of $50 per student, regardless how many activities they're in. It's $50 each. If they're a free reduced lunch student, they get a reduced fee of $25. McPherson's the same way, they're $50, but if they're a free reduced, then it's knocked down to $35.
Does that include music?
Yes.
Okay,
anything.
so any,
Quiz bowl, music.
One or
orchestra,
five,
anything.
they pay
Doesn't
that.
matter how many, it's just a flat $50 fee.
does anybody know what those schools charge activity fee-wise?
KSB has all those numbers. We've had them before they can get them, you can get every 4 and 5A school if you want.
You know, I know Abilene does not charge at this time, they're a 4A school. Heston's another one that does not charge at this time. Colby does. You know, you're going to find a mixture of schools that some of them do, some of them don't.
Then you have to look at which ones do. If they do charge a fee, do they also have an activity fee like we already are assessing? Because I know a lot of the concerns are our fees are so high on other issues compared to, I think add this would just be we're feeding the parents to death, and those are the parents that are helping our program survive right now.
And to get to the 27,100, you just counted each student participating one time, correct? Okay.
No, I think you counted every,
you
that was,
counted every-
those were duplicated.
Yeah.
If they were in more than one activity,
Yeah.
then it was duplicated.
Oh, okay.
So somebody may be paying $75 a year
Correct.
if they did 3 activities.
They did 3
Three
activities,
sports,
okay.
$75 a year. No,
And the scary thing is some of those kids that are in 3 sports may also be in orchestra or vocal or something else extra academically that would be assessed another fee.
Maybe I missed this when you guys were explaining it, but on the, shouldn't the $50, oh, that's just the $50 activity fee of 29, never mind, I understand. So that's the total number of students that pay the activity fee?
Yes.
Do we assess, and I guess this goes back to the same discussion on some of the sports. I know we were given a couple of months ago here a sheet on the breakdown as far as per sport, what it costs per kid and everything else. How do we assess that? I noticed some of those, and not picking on anyone in particular, but there may have been one of them where, I mean, the cost per student was substantially higher because we just didn't have that many kids in that. How do we justify, or where are our breakoff points in that as far as to say, okay, we don't have enough people going after this, it's not worth the money we're spending to offer it?
Our NEA agreement has how many we are allowed, and it's based on per ratio. After a certain number we're allowed, there's a maximum number of coaches allowed if needed by, how many players or participants we have out. And the reason I know the one you're asking about was girls basketball, because there's only
There were 2 or 3 of them, I think. but
girls
I-
basketball, which only had 24 participants.
25.
25.
that's just basic. The other thing that I think is very, very important is supervision. Are we opening ourselves up if we cut a coach because there's not enough coaches to supervise? Example I'll give you is golf. We are only allowed so many players to go to the country club to practice. And so Coach Watts is there. Our JV program, they have to practice at Fort Hays. So obviously we need somebody there to supervise those kids with that, and supervising the locker room, supervising out on the practice field. And coaches already, for a lot of those sports, are stretched, trying to be in all those places to supervise. And if we don't have those, then, we do the best we can and pray that an incident doesn't happen and we don't end up in court.
How many 4A schools at the middle school level have 7th grade activities?
I'm guessing almost all. Everybody we participate against, all the Western Athletic Conference, the Salines McPherson's, all the Pioneer League.
A lot of those WAC leagues or schools are 5 and 6A, right?
Now, yeah.
I mean, it'd be interesting to know how many 4A schools.
Well, then we participate against Colby and Dillon, Missouri, and Pratt, and all that stuff as well.
Well, then, on the high school level, it'd be interesting to see how many 4A schools have all the different offerings of athletics, whether it be specific sports, but then JV, freshman, all the different levels.
And I'll give you an example. This fall, we're 4A in football. We have a number of, all those teams that we play in the district playoff had those levels. And we lost a game. If we eliminate a level, whether it be JV or freshman, it's going to be harder and harder to schedule teams because they want to have a full schedule as well. If we can't meet their needs of having a freshman game or a JV squad to play them, they're not going to schedule us. They're going to go find somebody else to play. And that hurts our kids. That hurts our kids. And so that's a concern.
And I guess I should clarify too, I know you were talking about what coaches and the other stuff, I guess that was kind of where I was asking, not necessarily just basketball or whatever, but I think one of them was also tennis, one of the tennis, we had very few people, but I guess that's my question is how do we justify, we're spending this much money per kid, we've only got X amount out there, at the end of the day, there's only so much money to go around. And I guess that's where I'm asking, do we look at?
This will answer your question. Usually it's based upon, I ask other school districts and with them. Most of them base their ratio on 10 to 12 to 1 is what they would like to have coaches available. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and like I said, I guess that's where I was just saying, and some of those, when you get down to it, and I'm using, not picking on tennis, I'm using it as an example. I mean, at the end of the day, if there's only 5 kids out for that, do you offer it for, if it's girls tennis, boys tennis, whatever it is? I mean, I guess that's at the end of the day, when there's only so much money and you're paying that much per kid to offer that.
And some of it's different too, because as Chris mentioned, tennis and golf are very unique.
Sure.
Very, very seldom do more than 8 of my tennis players play in one day, because you can't get the games in time. And so when my 8 go, for example, Wednesday, they're going to McPherson. That leaves 14 more that still need to practice because they play on Thursday. So one coach will go Wednesday with the team to the matches, the other coach will stay behind and practice the other 14 kids. And it's that way it is as well. Because tennis and golf are so unique because they don't all play the same day every time.
Under our current middle school contract for our league, do we have latitude to eliminate sports if we wanted to and stay within that league?
No.
And then if we looked at, is there any chance in the future that, Russell, I don't know. I mean, do we have any other options as far as leagues really go? Is anybody in the area?
The small schools that used to play us back when the MSAA games, we had Kennedy, Lard, Pratt, they're all in different leagues now because they're so much smaller than us, they wouldn't consider it.
So even with us being 4A for a few years, ultimately we're in that rock and a hard spot.
We're bigger now, middle school, even though they're 4A, we're bigger now at middle school than we've been in quite a while. And that's going up, that's why we've added on 2 additions.
We'll probably be at 4, we'll be at 4. Well, and you never know because you don't know. It starts at the biggest schools and works its way backwards, but I don't think any of those big schools are going to get smaller, but we are, or at least our enrollment projections at the high school, we're going to drop into the 600s in the next 5 years. At least that's what you guys gave us, right, Dean?
I don't think it's going to be that low when you look at the middle school numbers now.
So we have 200 class.
Yeah.
I'm just going off of what we...
No, that's what
meetings ago.
KASB, their report had showed that those numbers were going to decline a lot, but based on what we're seeing in the middle school and those elementary numbers, I don't see that happening, but...
Well, the 8th grade class right now is larger than the senior class, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because the senior class is pretty small.
Now, what do you have, 100 or 160? About 40, yeah.
And then the next year, we should stay about the same, the following year, probably up to 40, and then another, so just keep 40, another 40, and another. That's if we don't.
And I think this is what Chris did, and Bruce did the same thing on one of the spreadsheets, but they went through the number of participants and how many coaches they have now, and what the student-athlete, or the athlete-coach ratio is, and what I asked him to do is drop one coach, not that we're going to do that, we can't on everything, but then look at the ratio. So if you want to have some comparison of where we are, I think this is a good one for the high school, and middle school did the same thing, and some of the numbers get get pretty high, and then if you have one coach, the supervision piece is what they had talked about, gets real tough if you have one team going someplace, but that's a pretty good document to do some comparisons with.
So with both the Booster Club and the athletic directors here, this pay to participate, it is the shared opinion then that it would be detrimental to our fundraising and our all-around general support? That's unanimous between both groups?
Yes, I believe it would hurt our fundraising. Parents would say, I'm paying this pay to participate fee. Why does my son and daughter need to go out and raise money? What? And again, the amount of money that it generates, you generate a lot more by fundraising and have the pay to participate fee.
What would the pay to participate fee be based on these numbers? If you had to equal it out.
What the board wants to have. I mean, any $25, some go $50, some go, school districts go.
And most of those that you see, it's a one-time fee, or is that 25 per sport up to X amount of dollars, or?
It varies. I'll say probably 90% of them are one-time fee. One, because it eliminates the accounting nightmare.
Sure.
You know, and, how do you, what's going to be tough is the student has to pay a fee before they participate in an athletic event. Making that phone call to that parent, to that kid, sorry, you didn't pay your fee yet, you can't participate. Not a phone call that I enjoy looking forward to making.
To answer that
Pay
question,
fee, which fee will they not pay?
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
we just ran some quick numbers based on last year's donations, Booster Club, and fundraising. With 730 participants, it'd be about $211 per participant to raise that amount of money.
To raise the 404?
To raise, well, I just was looking at high school, excuse me, just the donations, fundraiser, and parent costs, and Booster Club donate contributions from last year at the high school would be $210.
Does that include the carryover or taking that out?
I took that out.
Okay.
So if you included, yeah, kind of figure it from there.
But you had, how many students did you figure?
270.
Because if you take the, I don't know what number you guys used, but I just took the 14,700 divided by $25 is 588 students. Or,
I'm sorry, I think I used total enrollment. What did you say it was, Ray?
Well,
oh, you were.
730 is what the number of participants.
And that
High
number
school
there
and middle
was
school.
what I turned into Keisha for our classification,
The 588.
the 730. It's enrollment
So that's a student in multiple sports.
for,
That's
yes,
the total enrollment of the building. That's the building enrollment, right?
for the way Keisha figures their classifications, yes.
So that would just be if we had every child bear that expense, that would be the cost, not just those participating.
There were 614 that you had down as participating. Yeah.
There's 614 that person, and that's this year's numbers. That's this year's numbers.
And that'd be $250 per participant.
But again, those could have been counted twice, or
Yes,
that's per activity.
per activity. And again, that's just athletics.
That's not band or?
That's not band, that's not band, forensics, that's not music, orchestra.
How'd you come up with the 14,700? On the, in that right there, $25 paid to participate, high school.
That was based upon $25 fee for every activity. That the number of 614 students participated.
614 times 25 is 15,350. That number represents 588 students. I don't understand.
Is that last year's number, 588?
That might have been last year's number.
Because everything else on there is last year's summary. So, I mean, it's $600 difference.
And I guess, I don't know if I'm allowed to make a comment from the seats or not, but another.
Do you want
add the
to,
cloud
John,
of-
do you want to come up to the mic?
Yeah, sorry. I guess something else to just consider, that contribution from the Booster Club line item 23,294 is not the total of what the Booster Club contributed to Hayes High School athletics that year. That's probably the wish list at that point in time. So the other monies that paid for motel rooms, I mean, there's a whole list of things that we have contributed back to the athletic. That's not the total that probably I would assume that's probably the wish list only. So if you're going to get down to the numbers, then I think there's a lot more numbers you have to consider if you're going to get down to per student what they would pay. If you took the total of what our businesses are doing, total Booster Club, price per student, I guess was my comment. Thank you.
I think that's something we do need, though, in order to have a really meaningful conversation. We've got to know what the actual cost would be if we're thinking about anything. If not, if this is just for
Right now, we're
conversation.
at a minimum of $250. So it's just gonna,
If you got rid of the Booster Club stuff?
no, we're saying to balance, to compensate if we wanted to go even Steven across the board. Tracy's numbers were $250 per student.
I mean, if you take the 588, which, whether it's that or the other, but 588 is what those numbers were, the same number of students that were in, and you back out, you take the 321, 689, less the $83,000 carryover, it's 405 and some change.
Per student?
But if you divide it by the 588, take 321, 689, less 83,478, divided by 588.
Well, you have to pull out the 84,000.
That's the 83,478 back out.
I guess what's the goal? What do we want to find out here? If we're going to charge every penny for every activity and charge it to a kid, if that's what we want to do, then we can figure out those numbers, but if not, I think we need to determine if we want to do the activity fee that we have or increase it, something like that, or if we want to be scot-free. I think it's going to cost more in the long run for what kids lose than what we contribute to it.
I think this has been insightful and valuable to go through. I think our fees, as we know, are high. So I think if we want to pursue this, we need to look at balancing our total fees per student in that discussion. I think the value of the fundraising and the parent contributions and the activities of the Booster Club, the support that we have for our sports programs is very valuable, and I do think it will be at risk if we start imposing fees. So while I think this has been a good exercise and discussion, I would say it's tabled until we get into a position where we are strapped, completely strapped, and are looking at having to cut.
I second that. I would say the only flaw in that rationale is that every time we've talked about that, we've based the assumption that the fundraising will go away on just that assumption. And if you're going to look at that, wouldn't we go to McPherson and those other districts that did it and see what the participation levels have changed?
Well, and I think I think the other piece of that is also to know what their total fee structure looks like. You know, what are they charging for enrollment? What are they charging for activity fees? I mean, I think this is going to require another dive to get to that level, and I guess I'm questioning, do we wish to pursue it at this time?
And McPherson's also one high school setup too. I would imagine that makes some kind of a difference as well. You know, you've got an entire community behind one high school, one middle school. I don't know, it just seems if you're looking at a total compensatory equalizing, I mean, I think the fees would be outlandish to try to balance what the fundraising is with any type, I mean, I just think that's completely out of line. So then it would be, is the 14,700 or the 24,000, is that worth what you may or may not lose on the fundraising side?
The other thing we haven't discussed, Chris and I both coached here over 20 years before we became athletic directors. If my kid's paying $400, you better be on the field playing. What do we do with the kids that make the team, have paid $400? The pressure on those coaches to play those kids is going to be incredible. And those coaches carry so much pressure as it is to play kids, and to, believe it or not, self-induced pressure to win because none of us like to lose. If we start charging that much money, there's going to be an amount of pressure on those coaches to play all those kids more and more that will not be pleasant for keeping coaches.
Another thing that's not included in this, Bruce and I were talking up here, is the support that we get from the community as far as the Hay City Shootout, hospitality room, and donate food and things to help reduce our cost.
The wrestling tournament.
The Bob Cooten Wrestling Tournament.
We don't pay a cent for hospitality.
The hospitality rooms that these businesses, restaurants in town that support us and donate that is probably at least, I'm going to guess, around 5,000, if not more. We all our activities that we do and go out and talk to those businesses.
It's not just athletics either. My weightlifting class has sold Casey's cards for 2 years. It brings in about $2,000 a year to replace equipment. So we don't have the money for equipment in our weightlifting budget. It's just, you try to buy a treadmill, it's $4,600. A typical machine that we can make last commercial grades, $1,000.
At the end of the day, I don't think it's obviously feasible that we would do away with fundraising or anything like that, but I guess I to an extent would be at least, it sounds like you've got a lot of the information from some of the other schools and things like that. I would be curious just to see, you know, if those that are charging the fundraising, or I'm sorry, are charging the activity fee, you know, are they also, do they have an activity fee and they're doing a $25 pay to play or $35 or whatever it was, and how that did affect, you know, if they're doing fundraising or things like that. I mean, obviously, we know there's districts out there doing it, but I guess I'm just curious.
I'd have to...
I didn't know if you had some of that information now based off the figures you had.
No, I don't have that.
There's too much variation in it, you know what I'm saying? There's so many different schools that do it so many different ways, but then again, as Greg or Sarah, one of you mentioned, we'd have to also see what do they charge it for the regular fees, what are their work fees, what are their enrollment fees, what are their tech class fees, how much are they paying for industrial arts classes, et cetera, because all those...
That's all out there. We've had that before. I think that you've been before. That could maybe not, but we've seen, it's old, but that data's out there by KSB, so if we want to look at it, we can. I don't know what you're going to discern from it, but I guess if we don't want to raise a fee in this area, that's one thing, but to me, it's difficult when we raise the fee in kindergarten, but we can't look at it in anything else, so.
Tracy, is it possible just to get that number, like we did with the kindergarten, when we discussed kindergarten fees? Just to get what the fee would have to be to cover it?
I mean, it'd be
That $250 or
$250
whatever.
to $400. I mean, it just depends on how deep you want to get. I mean, like Chris said, there's items that we don't track either that are
Right.
donated. I mean, I guess unless you're going to consider that amount, I don't know what benefit it might do, but I mean, it takes some work to try to get.
And I guess that's my deal, though. I mean, I don't think there's any way we can go away and we would ever do away with the fundraising stuff.
Right.
I don't think it's feasible to go through, and I mean, I would doubt you're going to find too many places that are going to be charging $400 and some.
Well, the booster club would stop, even if
But
you did.
I guess that's my
charge it.
question, though, is in these other areas that have done it, you know, what kind of, you know, are they still getting from their booster clubs and things like that?
And I agree, the Booster Club won't stop, but I do believe it's going to have an impact. And what is that impact going to be with parents not willing to help at the Booster Club to get out and can support that, that's an unknown. You know,
Right.
And I know Shannon has it pulled up here now, what it costs, workbook material, just at the high school, the technology activity, driver's ed, that's totally optional if somebody wants to do it. But excluding all those things, it's $256 per student, just with the top three. Is it more than that? The top three fees there, but, in middle school, you can see the same. And later, our discussion's going to lead into technology fees through K through 12. High school's already doing those, but middle school and elementary aren't. So we're going to have to look at that as well and see where we go. What do you want to do with this issue?
I want to table it. I'm not ready to vote for any kind of pay-to-play at this point.
I don't know that I'm ready to vote for it, but I wouldn't mind seeing just how some of the other districts are doing it as far as, just so, at the end of the day, we can say we've looked at all options and,
when you say how the other districts are doing it, can you be a little bit more specific?
such as if they're charging a pay-to-play and whether it's an activity fee and whatever else, to where you go, and we may not be able to find somebody out there that's exactly the way we're doing things, but, obviously there are other districts out there doing pay-to-play, and they still have booster clubs and everything else, so I guess, like I said, at the end of the day, we can come back and say, hey, we looked at all options, and this is what's on the table, and this is the direction, and whether we choose to implement anything, that's obviously up to the rest of the board as well, but at the end of the day, we can say we've looked at it.
Yeah, but if you don't have at least 4 people that want to see the data, you might as well just move on.
Yeah, and I would agree, yeah.
You know.
That's my opinion.
Put it on a later agenda, or?
Maybe bring it up with the new board. There's 3 of us leaving.
We're right in the middle, too.
Huh?
So we're right in the middle,
Right in the
too.
middle.
Well, 3 of us are all see, get us all in one shot right now.
Well, we can talk to some of the other similar schools and see, and, keep discussing it a little bit.
When you
I
check
don't know
the,
if you want, you might want to find out, I don't know if anybody else wants to see it on. You've got 2 board members that have said they do, 2 that have said they don't, and 3 that haven't said one way or the other, so.
I'd like to see the information.
Do what?
I'd like to see the information. I don't know about Josh.
I don't have a problem seeing the information, as long as it's apples to apples. It's just kind of like the technology thing, when some places don't have one-to-one, what do they have? They got brand-new facilities, they've got brand-new high schools, they've got everything else that could be possibly listed out. So they got $70 million in addition to what we're, looking at for $1.6 million. So I don't mind seeing the information. The pay to participate, I have a hard time figuring out whether it's real or whether it's token. I understand that there's some people in the community that are very upset that there's not one, especially with the other fees. However, when you look at each individual sport, every player has an assignment. They have a responsibility. So, like I said earlier, whether it's the parents writing a check because they don't want to go sell anything and put the time and effort in, most families actually are putting the time and effort in. Therefore, in some regard, I do see it as already being a pay to participate, because if you don't go and raise that money, you don't have a sport. It's plain and simple. We can't cover it. The school district is not sustaining our athletics program. It is the booster club and it is the community, plain and simple. So I think we've probably got some of the highest fees already in the state of Kansas. Looking at next couple of years' budget, again, I don't mind seeing the information. I just think that we actually already are paying to participate.
Well, that's the activity fee that we charge. That's what I think that is. And that's why I say, for simplicity's sake, if we want to increase and and pick up, or have families pick up more of that cost, we ought to look at increasing that. It'd be a lot easier to track than try to do every sport. So I look at it that we are charging something to have kids participate.
And I wouldn't have a problem eliminating the kindergarten fee, but I don't see a big fundraising movement to go out and raise $250,000 for kindergarten. So I'm okay seeing the information. I mean, that's what we want to do. We want to see it and lay it all out there and put it to bed one way or the other. I'm fine with that.
We will gather some information and come back at another work session and we'll have another discussion. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
The next item then is Assurance Partners. And Christie, if you want to come up and give us your good news, I guess. And
Good evening. I'm Christy Balthazar with Assurance Partners, and I hope most of you will recall that you appointed us as your insurance broker at your last board meeting, and I think you already have the information that I want to review with you tonight that shows that we're bringing to you this meeting an option of $33,000 the cost for the risk transfer program. But for just a minute, I kind of want to put that savings aside because that can't be your only decision point tonight. So I'm going to talk a little bit about, give you a little bit of background that our firm has worked in the alternative risk transfer market, which means that we don't always work with clients just on a traditional insurance program. We'll utilize alternative forms of risk transfer. And the program that you're going to consider tonight is just that. It's an alternative form of a risk transfer program. So the days of trading dollars with insurance companies are coming to an end. Over 50% of the commercial insurance place is moving to alternative risk transfer and things. So I wanted to share that with you because this is not something new. Alternative risk transfer isn't. Our firm's been working with different programs like this for the past decade. However, this is a new program in the state of Kansas. So Martha Gallagher, who is a large insurance risk management insurance brokerage firm, has managed programs such as this in 11 different states, and they manage 13 other programs. So they have put this program together and have presented it to the Insurance Commission of Kansas and are seeking their approval to launch this program for our educational system in Kansas. So if we could start with this document, I want to explain, just go back. I just want to explain how the pool structure works. So here, we start at the bottom of the screen, and you see that in yellow boxes, all the pool participants will have $1,000 maintenance SIR, that stands for self-insured retention. That's actually the layer of insurance protection that you're pooling with other participants across the state. So you have $75,000 for property, $50,000 for a casualty line, and then another $50,000 when it comes to your school board legal liability. That's the risk that you're essentially sharing with other members of the pool. Now, if you go to the far right of the page, the green box is your lost fund. Based on all of the schools that were submitted as charter members, the state of Kansas and the Arthur J. Gallagher Company have done an actuarial study and approval that says, based on their loss history, if there's a loss fund of $550,000 established, day one, which would be 7/1 of this year, then the insurance department believes that this pool is well-funded for projected losses based on historical losses of those members. The next layer, I'll just stop. You may have any questions so far, because I don't want to perceive you don't understand the structure if you have any questions about anything. Okay, so the next layer in blue is actually insurance that is purchased by the home. So the next layer of protection, $500,000 in property, $2 million occurrence up to $4 million aggregate on your casualty lines and also on your school board legal liability. That's an actual insurance program that's purchased over and above what the pool is taking care of on the self-insured retention piece. I also want to point out the blue box on top of the loss fund, because the program also purchases a stopgap policy of an additional $2 million worth of loss protection or funding above and beyond that $550,000 that participants are funding in the loss fund. That's a really critical point, because that stop loss insurance is what would protect the pool from ever having assessments have to take place. That means that there would never be a situation where the loss fund, there isn't enough money in the loss fund, and that they would come back to participants and say, hey, we need more money because somebody had a significant loss. That's what that stop loss policy is for, provides an additional your losses. Now, we come back to the far right. The program also goes and purchases excess property coverage to the tune of in excess coverage. That excess is also going to pick up earthquake and flood coverage as well. So you can see that there are layers of protection provided here. The intent of a pool in Kansas is to provide you a sustainable format or model for controlling your costs. So all participants are going to be focused on all or reduced losses. Each district should have an interest in not having losses occur, and knowing that they're also willing to share in some risk, a layer of risk, no more than the $75,000 on the line, as an example, and that they're willing to pay a portion of the loss fund and contribute to that loss fund, so that the money is there when losses do occur. Again, beyond that, there's a layer of insurance protection, and then yet another layer of excess protection on the property. Again, I'll open it up for any questions about how the structure of the pool works.
Some of these terms are new to me. Can we go through a couple scenarios? Let's say we had a cafeteria kitchen fire and lost X amount. That would fall under that first column, property?
Yes.
Okay. And so we would pay the $1,000 deductible? Okay. And then, I'm sorry, what is the SIR again?
So then that's the self-insured retention that the pool itself maintains. So the pool would settle, adjust the claim, and settle out of the loss fund, the $550,000 over on the far right. Now, if your loss exceeds the $75,000, insurance comes into play. And Berkeley, the insurance company that's participating in the pool, would pick up the excess beyond the $75,000.
Okay. Okay.
Up to
And
a
so that
maximum of
75,
500,000? Okay.
so the 75,000 though would count into that total for everybody in the pool, the 550,000, is that right? Okay, so if our claim was 80,000, 75,000 will be paid out of the pool, right? But that will go into that $550,000 loss fund. So that's the total of all the pool participants for that year, right? So we've just taken 75,000 of that, 550, okay.
Good question, though.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay. Feel free to come back to this as we look at the comparison of coverages thing. If it triggers a question in your mind, feel free to jump in. So with that, we'll go to the comparison. What I would tell you about this program is I've been in the business for 20 years. I've represented school districts for over 12 of those 20 years. And I've never seen coverage program this broad. So you see that Gallagher is very good at what they do. They know that you need broad coverages for the district, but they also know that by having the pool, it allows them to create buying power in order to get those coverages in a very cost-effective fashion. So what we did is we submitted based on the limits that you had provided in your request for proposal earlier this year. We submitted those same expiring limits that you have with EMC Insurance Company. So we tried to keep this as much apples to apples as we could, but the truth is it's really we're comparing an apple to a banana. They're both risk transfer programs, but they're structured very differently. And in almost all cases, other than the limits that we can control, where we specify like the property values, etc. In almost all cases, the pool is provided are more broad in nature. Now, I don't know if you'd like for me to go over this line item by line item, which I would be happy to do, or if you just like me to open it up for questions as you review this comparison. Which would you prefer?
Any preferences?
I can tell you that we've met previously with Dean and Tracy over the phone and have reviewed the coverages with them.
Line item by line
Yes.
item? Okay.
Yes. So,
Maybe you could just highlight some of the areas that we would have coverage that we don't currently have now. Might be a good thing to point out to the board.
Okay. A couple of the things that we've identified, we'll start with flood coverage. You would have the ability to eliminate all the additional flood policies that you're currently purchasing separate and independent of the rest of your package because of the coverage that is provided in the program. We also pick up earthquake coverage for we have none. When it comes to the equipment breakdown, again, you can see a much more broad limit there, again, based on the buying power of the pool. The same for the electronic data processing. On the next page, under your business income and extra expense, the fact that ordinary payroll is included and intended to be included in your limit is significant because that essentially means that if you had a disaster, you would continue to receive or have the funds available to pay all your regular payroll that you have. It's not limited to just professionals. It would allow you to keep your maintenance, custodial, bus drivers, etc. So a little bit broader form in that regard. On the inland marine coverage, it's structured a little bit differently. But again, there's no risk of co-insurance or underinsured penalty in the event of a loss. Although on your inland marine, your deductible being $1,000 rather than the $500.
And I'm sorry, what does inland marine mean?
Inland marine is going to encompass your property that's going to be mobile in nature. It may move around from one location to another. It's not permanently located or utilized at one location.
Okay.
It may be mobile, so tractors, mowers, other equipment that may be utilized throughout the district.
How much of that do we have?
You just have 62,000
Okay, oh, that's ours, okay.
And everything. I don't have the schedule with me, but again, I know that Tracy and we have gone over that schedule and it's current. The main page is on your general liability. I would really point out the increased limits that you have. Now, having said that, it is a per member aggregate limit and a per member occurrence limit. But these limits are structured to coordinate with the Kansas tort immunity protection layers as well. So you have some layers of immunity that are afforded to you, and so this coverage is structured to coordinate with that. So you may notice as we go further that because of the limits included on the general liability, it reduces the need or eliminates the need to purchase an additional umbrella policy separate in addition to the general liability. On the sexual abuse and molestation, we have not done a complete analysis of your policy yet with EMC. However, having said that, the proposal that was provided to us in the summary, I think it was provided by your former broker, didn't specify that you have that coverage. So we classified that, what we believe to be accurate, and that is we've not determined with certainty that it includes sexual abuse and molestation, but we do know with certainty that the pool program does. The employee benefit liability, again, more broad limits of coverage and layer of protection. The same on the commercial auto. The other thing I want to point out is I think last year you changed your physical damage deductibles on your autos. You increased them to $3,000. By going into this program, again, all members have a $1,000 deductible. So that doesn't vary by district or by participant in the group.
What is garage keeper's legal liability that does go up over what we have with the deductible per auto?
That would be for if you have an auto body class or a shop class where they bring the students to vehicle in and they would do some work on it, or sometimes they'll take a project from the community and they'll do work on it, and you have that vehicle in your care, custody, and control. Currently, you are protected for those things for which you become legally liable. You're not covered for everything. So an example would be if the vehicle were left outside the hailstorm, you're not legally liable for hail. So you wouldn't have protection. The vehicle would have to take care of that themselves. However, if the vehicle were inside and a fire ensued as a result of some of the operations in the shop, you may be legally liable for that, and you have protection to $25,000 limit. Questions so far? Okay. On the crime coverage, this is the only place where you pick up your employee dishonesty and then all of the different things that can happen, such as forgery and alterations, theft of monies and securities, computer fraud, and fraudulent fund transfer. Again, as we all do more online banking, automatic deposits, things of that nature, there's more risk and exposure for someone not handling those transactions honestly. So the program includes very broad limits in that regard because of that. The next item is one that you should be very interested in your school leaders, errors, and omissions. This is where the protection for all of you comes from. You have a $2 million per member occurrence with a $4 million aggregate. An aggregate limit means that's the most that would be paid out on your behalf in any one policy period. And then lastly, I've already commented on the fact that because of the higher casualty limits and liability limits, it eliminates the need to purchase an additional umbrella policy. So that brings us to the premium summary of the program. And you can see your expiring premiums with agency, and we did also include the flood policy that can be eliminated. Total about $153,000 in expiring premium. You have an opportunity to be a charter member of this program in the state of Kansas and enter out a total program cost of $120,000. Now, a couple of things that you should consider. It's a 2-year commitment. The reason why it's a 2-year commitment is because everybody's probably thinking to themselves, I'm going to save money in the first year, I'm going to get jack up rates in the second year. No, they're not. Part of the way they protect from that happening is by requiring that 2-year commitment. That way they don't have districts move in and out quickly and randomly, but rather they can do this in a sustainable fashion so that they can hold pricing steady. Now, when you look at the pricing for the Kansas Fuel Program, you see a fixed cost of $93,936. That fixed cost is really the insurance premium that you're paying for those insurance layers, the blue box and the red box. Those are your premiums. The variable cost is the fact that the Hayes School District will contribute $26,200 to the $550,000 loss fund that's required by the state. That's a variable cost. But again, it doesn't vary throughout the year. It means that each and every year, Arthur Gallagher will go to the insurance department with the actuary information to confirm that we are appropriately funding for losses. And that will also take into account the performance of every single member in the pool. So when you think about what will cause cost differences in the future, increases in the future, I would say you're at a greater risk of having your variable costs go up if you don't control the losses, if you don't do the right things. I've heard you talk about a couple of those things in the previous conversation. You can't be a penny wise and a pound foolish. You can't have unaccompanied student athletes out and about. Who knows what? So we have to continue to have good risk management practices, do all that we can to prevent loss so that we can control our costs. But that's the number that has the potential to change if we become short-sighted and start cutting corners and losing our focus on preventing costs.
And that would change in year 2 of the 2-year contract?
It could change actually every single year, because every year they'll reevaluate the financial performance of the loss fund. And the Kansas Insurance Department weighs in on whether or not it's properly effective.
How many schools are signing up for this year?
That's a great question. I'll usually list here real quick. I think it's about 14. Anthony, Harper, Augusta, Baldwin City, Lewiston, Bueller, Derby, El Dorado, El Saline, Fort Leavenworth, Geary County, Hayes potentially, Hayesville, Rose Hill, and southeast of Sumner. 14 are right now all doing the same thing you're doing tonight and evaluating this option and making a determination of whether or not they're going to commit to the program to be a charter member. Now, the state is requiring, the State Insurance Commission is requiring that by April 17th, that we have these 14 members committed, because it'll take that to meet all of their premium volumes and their loss funding volumes that have been designed. So what we are asking boards to do is to approve the commitment to this pool. We have every reason to believe that the pool will become fully funded and will be launched in the state of Kansas effective 7/1 this year. However, there is the slightest chance that if we don't get commitment levels that we need, that it wouldn't be able to launch this year. Our recommendation to you is that we would continue to work your renewal project with USD and other carriers. I would tell you, my experience is that we should not anticipate this kind of cost savings from any other traditional risk transfer program. It's not there. I'm not seeing it anywhere. BMC is not reducing rates. So we would go ahead and work that renewal. That would essentially be your worst case scenario. And our intent would be to have renewal information to you for your May board meeting. I can't guarantee that it's going to be released by then, but that's certainly what we're targeting.
Now, EMC is who we're currently with.
Yes.
When we made this decision to go with your company,
And we're
it was our understanding that you were going to look at other companies in the hope that we could have some cost savings. So is it now down to EMC or this pool?
No, I'm here with this pool time because it's time sensitive. You
Okay.
have a one-time opportunity to be a charter member to help launch this program in Kansas with the assistance of Dean and Tracy. We've turned this opportunity around in about 2 weeks.
Okay.
And we'll continue to pursue other options if you pass on this one.
Okay.
Do you know what any of those other options look like at this time?
I can tell you again, I've spoken to PMC. I don't think you're going to see any cost reduction there. We are already to the marketplace with other options. We don't have to do any of those things now. And I wouldn't expect to April or July.
The other 13 schools have already said they're a go with this program.
No, 6 of them have. I will tell you that I had 2 other associates at 2 other board meetings tonight doing this very same thing. So it's a critical week for this program in Kansas, without a doubt. But
And do we need a broker anymore if we go with this group?
not necessarily.
If the state of Kansas is, if they're going to get on board with these guys, will we need a broker after 2 years?
Not necessarily.
What happens if the other districts don't come on board? Does this program go away?
It would go away for this year. I can tell you that I don't know when Gallagher will take another run at it, because it's their opinion with what's going on in the legislature with funding for the state. This should be the year this launches. Schools should be committed to helping themselves create a program that helps you control your own costs and your own destiny in the long term. It takes you out of having the fluctuation in the insurance marketplace. It removes that. Your workers' compensation is in a different pool, but for the very same reason. You want to pool that risk, hopefully control your losses, and participate in the investment program.
So at the end of the day, this is basically approximately about a $13,000 savings versus what we're doing now, including the $20,000 fee that we're paying insurance. And you guys have to know by the 17th?
Yes. So if boards want to convene in another meeting, if you're not comfortable having this review the information that is based on our discussion tonight, I'm going to have another meeting yet this week with a smaller committee. We're committed to participating in that as well. So that you can make bills educated and informed decisions.
How many, is Gallagher in several other states with schools now?
They are in 11 other states, so Kansas is not the first.
Okay.
In the stretch, they manage, I believe it's 13 other municipality programs.
with 15 or 20 schools each in each state, or do you have any idea?
It varies.
It varies.
on size. Kind of who your target market is, for not US.
Uh-huh.
We tried to get a very good sampling by size, by rural area, metro areas, et cetera, to have a very broad sampling of districts to prove to the insurance department the state of Kansas needs this option. All schools will benefit from this, regardless of size, regardless of location. They'll benefit from the participation.
Is there anything we're losing coverage on with this? You said we gained some stuff, but is there anything we're losing coverage?
Well, nothing jumps out. I mean, you may have some deductible differences in some areas.
On that very first page, can we bring that, the very first, not the, yeah, that one, thank you. Where it just says, yeah, scroll back up a little bit, like blanket building, yes versus 500 million, or blanket business personal property, yes versus 75,000. Okay, what's the yes equate to?
Under the column for EMC, which is very desired, you have blanket coverage for your buildings, and then separately you have blanket coverage for your contents. Under the pool, you have blanket up to the $500 million limit. And you have a blanket up to $75,000 in the pool program.
So currently, is there no limit then?
Correct. Your limit is that limit up there, your business, personal property.
Okay.
Locations.
So it'd be,
14 million.
okay, blanket building would be 73 million, blanket business would be 14. Okay. So
That is an area of difference in structure.
So your company was voted to give us insurance direction here. You're saying this is just a positive? You don't foresee any problems with this Gallagher company? If this program would not go through, you would still go back and compete for our best case scenario?
Exactly, we're already doing that, we already have that process underway. Yes.
And if we make a 2-year commitment on this, and for whatever reason, the state of Kansas comes back next year and says, no, we're not allowing them, we just revert back to business as usual?
Well, that would happen, they won't come back and say no after they launch the program. What they would do is, if there was cost to adjust the loss fund, that's what they will legislate to do. But something really, really horrific would have to occur for them to come back and say, we're stopping the program.
Okay.
They've not experienced that in many other states.
And
I can't be held responsible for what government does.
Sure.
But having said that,
But assurance is assuring us that this is going to be our best, even with the other bids still coming back. You don't think we're going to get a lower bid than this for what's recovering?
I think you have a very limited time frame to make a decision on a program that is going to save you money. If you have other options to come, I can guarantee you it will save you money.
Do you think this will save us the most money?
I do.
And with their experience in the other states, that adjusted loss that we have to contribute to, you don't see that in the past history with this company? We're not going to jump so far up next year that it's going to offset any savings and actually put us in the negative.
Again, this is structured to be sustainable. It's structured to allow schools to control their costs if they control their losses. So it's layered in such a way to prevent that from happening. Will there be adjustments to the loss fund? Yes, there will, based on losses. But you also have the potential of having unused loss dollars returned to your district 3 years down the road when the loss fund, if that $550,000 hasn't been spent on losses, you would get back a percentage basis based on your percentage of contribution to the loss fund. You would receive that back in a dividend. Is that a tremendous amount based on a $26,000 contribution? It's not going to be tremendous, but it's something. And today, you don't get anything back for the insurance dollars you pay if you don't have claims. Insurance companies.
If we give you a commitment tonight or this week, and one of the other bids do come back lower, we're locked into this program.
You are committed to this.
And but if they don't launch, then we're looking for the next lowest bid.
You got it. Other questions?
Your call, President.
Does anybody have any feelings one way or the other with this? We would have an option, if we wanted to, vote on it tonight without calling a special meeting Friday.
So then whether we're comfortable doing it tonight or whether we need more time?
Yeah, we have till Friday.
What would happen between now and Friday for all of us? Is there any additional information that would be forthcoming?
You just have to go out and see who Gallagher is.
Which
They're
I'm
AAA
doing.
rated, I
Is
take it.
anybody else Googling right now?
Because Gallagher in the paper, Berkeley is the A-rated paper.
Okay.
In the state of Kansas, they're the insurance company. Gallagher's the administrator, program administrator. They're the ones that are handling all the compliance, all of the analysis, actually has to go into not only launching, but effectively managing the program long term.
And Berkeley, how solvent is Berkeley?
They're A-rated carrier, I believe, their financial rating is so you all received a complete copy of all of that financial information.
Okay.
Have you ever worked with this company before?
A Berkeley company?
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't have any concern about the historical financial performance.
And as far as, like, the presentation that was provided to us of all the things that you guys do, take care of, assist with, working with Berkeley versus anybody else, no issues, no problems, everything's even across the board?
Right.
Okay.
What we need to do this. We're probably going to see as much savings.
If I could also add, Christie had mentioned that our flood insurance is covered in here, and that is just for Laughlin. If you would explain why Washington is not covered.
Right.
And then also our work comp is outside of this, so you're going to be bringing back quotes for, no matter which way you guys go with property casualty, for our flood insurance for Washington, and also our workman's comp.
Right, so the flood program, the care and the fee program excludes flood zone A, and you have a location in flood zone A. That's the policy that we can delineate. However, we're going to explore some options there to see if we can secure anything more cost effective. So that addresses, I think, the flood fees. In regards to the workers' compensation, again, as it was separate already from your package, again, you're already working on options. You'll receive your renewal from the Kansas Association of School Boards pool. So you'll receive your renewal direct from them, but we'll also explore any alternatives that would complement this program.
Anybody?
It doesn't matter to me if you want more time to make a decision.
We have till the 15th.
17th?
17th?
Friday at 5?
Friday at 5?
What I would ask is if you choose not to do this, I would ask for you to have very clear instructions for us on exactly what the expectations of again, I think a program with cost savings is what you were after, we're bringing dollar coverage, cost savings. So if you choose not to do it, we absolutely respect that, but we'll need to understand what your expectation is for your review.
You said other states were participating in something like this already?
Yes, Gallagher manages 13 other municipal pools in 11 other states.
And those are going over pretty well?
I mean, it was the same reason we went with the pool with the workman's comp, right? I mean, we're after savings. And in addition to getting the savings, we're getting broader coverage. I mean, across the board. 3 pages worth, it looked like to me. The only risk I see is that increased cost the second year. But we run that.
Risk today.
I was gonna say, we run that risk.
The other thing that I should mention, and I refer to as participants or members, they're going to likely to be active in this pool. So you're going to know, either your superintendent or you'll appoint someone to become an active member on your behalf, so that you understand how claims are administered, what the issues are with the pool. You'll never be surprised by what's going on with this program. You should have full access to anything that's going on with this program. And you get to have a say in how those things are handled, administered, et cetera. So again, it takes you from not having much of any control to having much greater influence on your risk transfer costs.
Will that variable cost loss fund of $26,200 change based on the number of participants that commit by Friday? No.
These are firm numbers.
How many of the 14 do you need in?
Well, we have a little bit of cushion, so we actually have more than 14 for consideration here. It's not about the number, it's about meeting the required threshold, the required exposure that the state outlines. So I would tell you, we want all 14 that we have listed here. Assure ourselves the best chance of the insurance commission.
So what does everybody kind of think? Your schedule's open Thursday and Friday?
Well, but I guess I'm questioning, what are we going to get between now and then? Why are we delaying
Well,
this
I would
till
be able
Thursday?
to ask people about Gallagher and
Research it a little bit.
Berkeley. I don't have any idea about it, other than she's telling me they're good, but she's working for them.
Not actually, I'm looking for you.
Well, I know.
Because I don't have any direct contact with Berkeley program. I mean, structure and the coverage, I have zero
It's really
contact
interesting.
with them.
I'm familiar with Gallagher, but, I mean, to answer Board Member Rankin's question, I mean, I agree with Marty that, I mean, you have the time to research it and find out, and it doesn't cost us anything other than we have to meet for a short period of time, sometime later this week, so.
We can have a member of Gallagher participate in that meeting, probably by telephone, or maybe to attend.
The city
But again, if you want
uses
direct
Gallagher.
contact, you can do that.
Toby uses?
City of Hayes, I don't know exactly what their affiliation is, but they're using Gallagher now.
They work with the municipal sector. It's not the same program or the same team, but yes,
Does anybody have a time Thursday or Friday that works? I was on the board. I can do either Thursday or Friday evening or morning.
I can do early morning or evening, but unless we set a specific time, I can let you know. But I'll make it work as best I can.
Does anybody have a time they can't meet?
I can't do Friday after about 2. So I can do Friday morning or Thursday anytime.
Does Friday morning at 7 or 7:38 work for anybody?
Yeah.
You ever do 7:30?
7:30 Friday morning?
Yeah.
All right.
No, I'll
do
do
it.
it. I'll be gone.
Oh, you'll be gone?
Are
Yeah.
you here Thursday at all?
I'll be gone Thursday and Friday.
Can you teleconference in?
It would depend.
Can you give your vote proxy to James?
Yeah, because I would lean with,
Well, we can at least know how you feel.
Yeah, how you feel.
yeah, I mean, no, I'm just saying, I don't know what, I understand your point on wanting more time to call and check around. I just have a hard time thinking that they would bring somebody to us that isn't reputable and isn't gonna do a good job. I know the city has worked with them. I would be ready to do something tonight, but I can definitely give whatever information I need, hopefully via the phone.
Do you have additional information on them?
I have provided,
Do we have that?
Yeah, it's in an attachment.
Yeah.
In one of the emails, there's 4 or 5 with it that were sent.
Sarah, you're going to be gone, and Cheryl both Thursday and Friday, right?
That's correct.
Dean, you'd be available, wouldn't you?
On Thursday and Friday,
Friday morning, 7:30?
yeah.
Is there any concern about the clerk though?
About the what?
Both clerk, our board clerk and our backup will both be gone, deputy clerk will both be gone. So who could serve as board clerk?
Could we appoint Dean to serve as that for Friday or not? Where's the board attorney?
Board attorney?
I'm breaking you in. So if both our board clerk and, I guess,
I do not know.
deputy
Into it a
or
little
backup.
bit further.
James, I've read the policy on that. You can actually nominate and vote for a board clerk to be used
At the
in
meeting?
proxy at the meeting, if
Okay.
you so choose.
So does that work? Friday, 7:30 for everybody?
Friday, 7:30, works for me.
and what information would you like? Would you just want the information about?
Can you list the other schools, the 11? Or not the schools, the states,
was
the
on
other
our-
11 states? Or were they up there?
What, didn't you have that on a page with the other schools? In that email, I read it somewhere, I think. It's in there.
It's in this packet.
I didn't know what they were earlier today when I read it, when she said Hayesville,
When you asked about states.
Yeah,
I
states.
understand that, but you're asking about the other
Yeah.
programs.
Yeah.
performance and development.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh.
How they're working.
Okay, so did we land on 7:30 a.m.?
Friday.
I appreciate your consideration of tonight, and I appreciate you and Tracy's work to help us bring on this opportunity quickly and this kind of conversation. And if there's any other information you want to enhance, I would try to.
I don't
I think I'm good.
I'm good.
That's good?
Thank
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. At this time, I would call for a 5-minute recess or break, I guess, to resume. 5 minutes enough? Adjournment, 5-minute adjournment?
raises a question, feel free to email me. I'll ask either, in this case, I had to talk to Donna to see what was going on with that particular line. But, we can always get you the explanation, but we're still staying within budget, just not on that one line item. And then the next report, we went ahead and
Hold on.
started.
I'm sorry. Tracy, can I go back? On these exceptions, it seems like we have a lot of the same exceptions. Like we have the third quarter food purchase, annual property and flood insurance. I mean, do we not know that those come out the same time every year and therefore be showing that in our projected percentage by that time?
We had talked about that. It would take a lot of speculation on my part to do that, kind of with the monthly amount. I can, but it's going to take it really out of the hands of our accounting system and put it in my hands to make those speculations. So, it's up to you guys, but there's going to be more chance for error and items like that where I'm estimating when that money's spent.
Because it seems to me like the exception should be things we didn't know were coming, like a new bus purchase. That seems legitimate exception to me, but a lot of these seem like, third quarter food purchase, we know it's coming first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, right?
Yeah, it's just when we're looking at a monthly basis, we are over what we should have spent at that point in time,
Okay.
50% halfway through the year.
Okay.
So, if they're justifiable, you don't want me to list them, I sure can. But our percentages are going to be different.
Okay. Okay.
Some of that would solve a lot, or some of those would be, I don't know where we're at, I think I brought it up last week, but if you have an adjustments column and send out what the adjustment was, like that in service, that would, if you adjusted that, pulled it out of another fund.
Yeah.
We're really not adjusting the budget though, because if we did that, it would be our accounting staff would have to be transferring from one line to another, and it wouldn't truly be reflecting what was spent this year, because in that one line, it is abnormal to have spent this. We don't want to think that that's the amount we will continue to spend in the future. So for budgeting purposes, that would make it more challenging. It would also be a lot more transfers between line items for several $100s at times to get it in our system again, to have that adjusted budget line. We'll do whatever you guys would like us to do. It's just, I want to explain that those would be the consequences and the challenges we face doing so.
Maybe I'm confused here. If we've got something that we're going to go over budget on, and we have to transfer from another account, we will see that justification.
Right.
Well, there's not going to be really a transfer from another account. It's all within the same budget. So we won't transfer from one line to another line.
How do you cover that expense? If you've budgeted, we'll say 50,000 and we spend 70,000, where does that 20,000 come from to cover the cost?
From another line that has
But that's-
20,000 left in it.
But we can show that.
If it was 20,000,
Yeah,
yes,
if
but if
it's
it's
a-
500, for our accounting staff to have to transfer all those, because it's going to,
Well, I don't think we need to do the actual transfer, but just say we have X number of dollars left in this account to cover that.
I think the problem that stems from what you're asking is that you get into a position, which is where we were previously, that at the end of the year, we just make it right.
Yeah.
And then the problem becomes that the only person that really knows the budget is Tracy. And that's good that you know it, but the board, their ability to look at it and make sure that, to me, it doesn't make any sense. But I know it's extra work when you're trying to figure out the long-range budget, but
We want to be able to track what we spend in every line. If we keep moving money in there, you never know if we're over budget or...
Well, but you would, because you'd have an adjustment column that said, here's how much we adjusted.
Well,
We started at 50, we adjusted 20 in, like Washington, for instance, we didn't have that money allocated for all the ramps and that, but we adjusted it in. It still should be in your 5-year previous budget, and you can look at that as you go forward and extrapolate out to say, well, we're not going to have that because we had this one-time expense here, but it does factor into that. I don't know, I've not been on any of the boards where you don't adjust and do it as you know you're going. Right now, some of those aren't over budget for the whole year, but they are to this point, and we know that with what we have to spend later, we're going to be over. So sometime before, because if you get to over 100% on any of those, you're over 100%, you don't know as a board if you're going to go over budget anything, or on everything. Because the other ones, we don't have a list of all the projected expenditures for the balance of the year. Maybe I'm not explaining it the best, but every board I've been on, you have every column we have there, except for you have adjustments that, and we used to on ours here, didn't use it a lot, but.
And we can, it will just be, our accounting staff will have to actually make that transfer within the budget.
But isn't that what we're doing?
No.
Well, how do we plan on paying for it then?
It's may not be in that line, but it's in that budget. And you have it, it's all accounted for, and you know how much more, and then next year you adjust up or down if you have more in one or the other. But if the whole thing, like, just general fund in general, obviously you can't overspend that. But each line item, and that's why it'll help us be able to project and, what our actual, a good budget number is. For each one of those lines is where we're trying to be.
Can we explore some graphs? James, I know you're fond of pictures. It's a lot of numbers. I feel like I'm flipping through pages, I'm reading the exceptions going back.
What kind of graph would you like to see showing what information?
Well, I think, I don't know. I mean,
If you could tell me what graph you'd like, I can sure generate it, but I don't know what you'd like to see.
I mean, I guess, what is the story we need to know month over month? Right? So I don't know if it's best served in a bar graph, where it shows our budget, what we've percentage spent, and then percentage allowable to tell that story, and then we've got the exceptions telling us when we're over, or if it's, I'm not sure. I can sit down and play with it. Does anybody else have ideas? Am I the only one that would benefit from seeing a graph? Or does everybody else like poring over these line by line by line?
Well, we've consolidated down to this. I mean, it used to be a 50-page report. I think you guys got little line by line. I mean, seriously, little line by line.
Oh, it was bad.
And so, was asked last year to try to come up with something that was more feasible and understandable. And this is what we,
Yeah.
This is numerous different options came before this. But I mean, I can add anything you'd like. I just
Well, and I
sure
think,
understand what
I actually heard throughout the campaign process that, I think there are people in our district, teachers, who would even, benefit or would like to hear what's happening with our budget. So, I mean, even if we can come up with a succinct way to show how we're tracking on budget, that we could even share out to our staff.
Well, I mean, this, to me, is about as simple as you can get with what percentage you spend of your budget compared to where you should be. I mean, the projections and how much you spend. Yeah, to me, that's about as easy as it can get, the percentage, just tracking the percentages. Sometimes it's different just because you expend everything at the beginning of the year for a service or something, but I mean, I don't know what else. Let us know, we'll try to do it, but I don't know what else we can get.
One of the things we talked about at the retreat was to take each line item and say certified salaries and maybe have a separate chart, but to be able to say that in the month of March, we're going to spend X percentage of that budget, and we spend X percentage of that budget, that would alleviate those that you spend 100% in August, and then you don't have anything else, but
I think, isn't it broken down that way?
Yeah, like just looking at Hayes Middle School, on page 2, Sheila, if you want to follow that. The certified salaries, shows the budget, it shows that we've spent 59.7%, and year-to-date allowable, taking into consideration all those lines that are included in that, is 59.64%. So we are just, a fraction of a percentage over budget on that, on certified salaries at Hayes Middle School.
Back to the adjustment side then. So, this was hard when I first came on the board, because the old budget that we worked with, all those pages, and you start reading off all these line items, and it's 800% over budget, 1,200% over budget, you know, and it was, okay, we're over budget on everything, you know, where did it come from? So then, if I'm understanding you correctly, we've got $23 million. We've got line items budgeted, but to adjust for that, truly, it doesn't necessarily come from any one thing. It just comes from outstanding money still.
For example, when we looked the last meeting at the list of how we were going to come up with the 200,000 reduction from our audit, you know, and I had on there 70,000 from transportation, salary and benefits. We didn't move that 70,000 to all these different line items, but we might, let me think of an example. Let's say this year we went over on fuel.
Sure.
Well, we would have used that line, those other lines to cover that without actually moving them within our accounting system. You understand what I'm saying? The 70,000 is out there, which shows on our bottom line, but we don't move it per line.
But when you start your budget for next year, for instance, so if your fuel costs were down this year, and let's assume that stays how it is and that we anticipate them down next year, are you starting at what you budgeted this year for fuel costs, or are you starting at our actual expenditures?
Well,
We
that's
would
what you have to,
estimate, yeah.
that's what you have to look at, what the projected fuel cost. I mean, this year they're low.
But if you don't adjust,
We see it, when I'm creating next year's budget, we look at every single line and say that fuel was budgeted at this amount, but we actually spent this amount. And then we have to estimate on what we think will happen to fuel next year and put somewhere in the middle or lower or higher depending on.
then I guess you wouldn't have to, on a one that's under budget, you wouldn't adjust. It's only the ones that are over budget that you have to adjust.
Yeah, actually we would though, because.
We would, anything under, of course.
But in next year's, I'm saying in this year's current budget,
No.
you wouldn't have to.
You wouldn't have to.
But that would be where you would pull from if you were, so that
Right.
way, you know, because as a board, when you look at it, you say, okay, we're going to adjust out of fuel to pay for the in-service overage. But if we just assume it's in fuel, then you've got to do that math in your head and remember that, oh yeah, that's how we're going to get to that, versus if you do the adjustment, it's just there and you can look at it. The next meeting, it shows that now that amount's adjusted and fuel's adjusted down, so.
I think that's where you look at
I
the
guess
bottom
that's-
line to see that we're still within budget for the general fund, we're still within budget for Head Start. You know, at the bottom line is where you're going to see that we're still within our total budget.
But that's the 23 million? Is that what you're talking about?
On where you're referring to.
Well, I guess it depends on
yeah.
which building you're looking at, but.
Right. Yeah, and if something, you know, I can't
But
give
that-
an example, but if something happened at the middle school, Roosevelt, I mean, you know, if there was money left over somewhere else, we'd have to pull from that if that was the situation. I mean, so it even goes between buildings, and it's all within the same fund, is where we have to spend all of general fund.
But that's what's happened in the past is they would make all those adjustments throughout the year, and then coming in and for me and Tracy to sit and start looking at the budget, looks like everything, you know, was the right number to start with, and it's, you know, there wasn't any overage, there wasn't any carryover and anything, and we had really no idea last year of where all that was. So that's why we want to get it as close as we can, and there's going to be, you know, fuel, utility costs, those types of things you don't know. I mean, you estimate those, but salaries, all that should be, I mean, all that should be down to the dollar.
I love this, you know, I like it, I think it's easy to work with. It's just hard, and just bear with me here, you know, I'm not my wife's an accountant, I'm not the money guy. But, so if we're $13,000 over and we're taking from just the money that's left over, that affects everything somehow, some way. And then when we're making projections the next year, it just seems to me like it would be easier to say, you know what, this 13,000, I am going to tag it. And I'm not saying you have to make a literal transfer, but I'm going to tag it to something so that I know that going into my projections for next year, you know, here's where I was. It just would be nice to tie it back into something versus, it's kind of like air. You know, it's, oh, we got this big pot of money, I'm gonna shovel off this corner of it and throw it in to cover everything. It's just, for me, it's hard to understand it without showing that it is coming from something specific.
Well, I mean, I have a folder that I keep all throughout the year of things that when there is a change or something, so I know to remember that next, you know, when we're budgeting for next year.
But I'd like to see that. You know, I would like to, no, not necessarily, but it's probably gonna make a lot more sense to you than it's going to me.
I mean, it would be done, it would take a lot of staff time to move $300 here and $500 there, and it'd be 2 transactions, 1 out and 1 in. I mean, it can be done, but I don't know that we have the staff at this point in time to do it.
So you're anticipating we're gonna be over on quite a few things?
Every year, you are on certain lines. I mean, if you've got a $500 budget in one line and they spend $515, you're gonna be over percentage-wise, you're gonna be over 100% in that line.
I mean, that's, when you get into that purchasing policy we talked about, though, if you have a policy that says you cannot go over budget, barring, you know, it's gonna, bells and whistles start going off when you have 500 budgeted, then we'll spend $1 more. Not saying you can't do it, but you're gonna have to, it's gonna have to go up and get approved.
Right.
And then that's when, that ought to trigger that adjustment.
And
If
it
it's
does.
that important that we've got to do it, then we should adjust.
And it does, they can't go through, they can't even enter the whole requisition if they're over, and so it has to come through our office, through Cheryl herself. If it's large enough, if it's $15, Cheryl's gonna go ahead and approve it if she knows the reason behind it. But if it's large, then I have to be approving it also.
How does the board president sign off on the checks? Because that's not on the check. I mean, because they're just signing checks, assuming, trusting that it's there.
It would be back to the 50-page report where you're looking at every line if you wanted that.
It would be?
I mean, if you want to see that they spent $515 in one line versus $500, that whole, I mean, I know this is consolidated into 10 pages instead of 50 or 40 or whatever it was. And that was just a general fund and supplemental that you guys probably looked at. These are all budgets, Head Start, special ed, everything.
Right, but we're just talking about if we're going over budget in one of these categories. I don't know that it would matter how we got to being over budget there. We're just gonna say, because we don't have any $500 line items on this set.
Right, they're all consolidated, so if you want to see that $500 line item to know when you're signing the check that it's over, you have to look at every single line. And all of these budgets together, I mean, it's hundreds of pages.
Sure. But if we, no, I don't want to beat this to death. But if we're on classified salaries right there, $728,000. If we go over, if we spend $730,000, I mean, I don't need to know exactly which thing caused the overage. I just need to know that we spent $730 and $200,000 is coming off of something else. Because even though we've got $23 million, it is still all tied to something.
Right, and if that was the case, we would have to move 2,000 out of a line item and put 2,000 into that line to show you an adjustment
Correct.
of that. And that is going to be a lot of stuff.
Why? And I'm not,
Because somebody has to physically go in and do it, and we're talking about, you know, it's going to be hundreds of line items that that's going to happen on by a very small amount. You know, these are consolidated into, I mean, that staff line of $728,000, our staff isn't a very good example because it's pretty consolidated, but for example, supplies, they're $482,000, that could be hundreds of lines that are included in that.
What you're doing right now is you're saying, here's why we're over. This is, for instance, the Washington, that we had the $50,000 of costs. You know why that's over, right? So it would be one adjustment to pull 50,000 out of somewhere and put it in there, right?
So what would be the threshold on what you'd like me to do, though?
Well,
50,000 or 15?
Well, but the question becomes, is if you don't watch every penny, why watch any?
I am watching everything.
Well, I know you are, but our job, I mean, we as a board took an oath to do this, and I know that it's not saying we don't trust you, but we've been down the road before with prior administrators that told us we had enough money to give a pay raise, and we didn't. And you've seen the effects of that, and so.
I think the only way I can satisfy that is to give you the full report.
But the full report just feeds into the summary, right?
Exactly.
So if you did the full report, it took the adjustments from the full report and added them to these summary lines, that would be the same thing, right?
But for our accounting system to pull it, we'd have to manually go in and take it out of one line and put it in another.
Right.
Would it be helpful if I went through and just like, at this point, counted how many lines or words, something with that, so you'd understand the magnitude of
No, I
all those?
understand. I understand the magnitude. I just think it's a question of the board wanting the information and the rub between us wanting the information and you guys doing it. Because as I understand it, at the end of the year, you have to do this anyway, right?
We do one lump sum transfer, a journal entry, one journal entry.
So if we anticipated what the overage was going to be, some of them you may not be able to get right, you may have to do multiples, but you're doing it anyway. It's just a matter of, it's kind of like when you reconcile your checkbook, you do it at the end of every month. You could wait till the end of every year and do it, but you do it every month to make sure that you didn't miss anything and you're not way off. And that's the way I.
But the journal entry is not associated with a line item. It's one total for the entire amount.
Line items versus this. Certified salaries might be broken down into a million different line items, but did we go over on certified salaries? Where did the money come from? I mean, if we're anticipating going over on 10,000 line items, then I would say that there's something wrong in general with that. That just, to me, because you're telling me the magnitude is so great that we don't have the manpower to be able to physically do this, which now you're actually concerning me, thinking that, because we're looking at the numbers, hell, we're on track to be pretty good with almost everything up there. We're 60 to 70 on a couple things, we're in the 80s, but I wouldn't anticipate us being over budget on hardly anything that's on these pages.
There's some line items that we need, a lot of them. And that's the thing, I mean, what does that, what do you want to see, or what's that going to show you, each one of those line items that, I mean?
Number one, to me, it would just be proper accounting. It would just be actually doing it the way it probably should be done.
We're doing it the way.
We're doing the way that it.
Yeah.
Well, but I got that education too, and the audit that comes from the accountants is a lot different than what I thought. So I understand that there's a bare minimum that we can do, or there's a more accurate way. And to me, it seems like it would be more accurate because it has to tie it back into something. All this money is allocated in the beginning. Therefore, all that money is technically tied to something, even though you get down at the end and you got something left over. And I guess I don't understand. I really just don't understand what the difficulty is of saying we went over budget on 200. We took money from 600 to put into 200 to show us that I just don't get I apologize here. I mean, I don't understand what's so difficult.
Tracy
I
or
really
Dean,
don't.
is there a way, this is kind of how I've run mine, where I have certain line items, I have a number of accounts. I'm not for certain how Alio completely works, but wouldn't it be easier just to put it in place, like a lot of businesses where you have that line item and you have a pool of money sitting somewhere that's not allocated yet for the year? And then you pull from that, but you document that transfer out of that 200,000.
Journal entry though. It's still another fund, it's unallocated funds, but right, you could do it.
But wouldn't that be simpler than basically capping your line items, your budgets, your individual budgets?
Well, we have to. I mean, by law, we have to have a certain amount allocated. I mean, you know, it's tracked by the state and how much goes to instruction, how much goes to, there's a whole breakdown
At-risk
of that.
and vocational and all of those things.
So I mean, we have to have a certain amount allocated every line that we're going to expend out of.
I guess this is, for my question would be, is there's been two people, some others, talking on this, but the question would be is, where's everybody else at? Does the board care or want this? If not, let's move on. If they do, then let's figure out if we want it and be done.
Do we have a retreat coming up where we can talk about this? What everybody wants to see from reporting? And
We will have a retreat.
could we maybe, or does everybody feel like you need it before then? When is that retreat?
Well, honestly, if you want to see it in that detail, I mean, we're going to be hiring somebody else.
Or I can provide you with a report that you can look through, you can look through it all. I mean, we provide you whatever you like, but to do that is just administratively not possible with the staff we have right now. But I can give you the full report that you can look through every line, but it is a lot of numbers.
Yeah, this report's way better, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think the current report is definitely helpful as far as doing that, but I also see what Josh is saying, because that was also something I think that was talked about at the first retreat, if I'm not mistaken. Just because as several of us brought up on a lot of the other boards we're on, it's, there's always some sort of a notation that says, if this line item's over, this is why it was over. And I understand the other stuff on there, but I do think that was also something that was brought up on the previous retreat, so I don't know what it's going to do to put it.
The explanation, it was the
documentation.
Transaction
exactly
with it to show how we're going to pay for it, because we're going to pull it out of this fund.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Sarah? Danielle?
It needs to be discussed, yeah. Can we hire another staff person for the office? No. Can we just do that report?
Superintendent
I mean, they
report.
have a report now, but like she
Right.
said, it's gonna be huge.
Well, I think it's something we can look at.
Discuss, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're,
Don't forget about it.
Yeah, we're taking up too much time now.
Well,
I think the point
but
is, if we could, meet somewhere in the middle. So here's the issues that some of us are having with the current reporting. Here's the information we're trying to get to. If it's not, is there another way to present it, or a supplement that could be provided, or something that would get us there? I think is the question. It sounds like we just need to maybe think about it a little bit more and
yeah, I mean, we could look at all of that. I mean, but I think it's going to be a retreat type topic
Okay.
rather than what we could figure out right now.
So what I would say is that we all need to provide our feedback for anything related to reporting, maybe prior to that retreat, so that we don't just walk in starting from
I agree.
scratch at that point. Maybe you guys could be prepared for all of that coming.
And I can show you some of the examples of the reports that we went through earlier in the year and see if that, is a little bit more appealing. Where we changed it multiple times to get to this point.
Right,
I'd like to see it
right.
something differently, and I can show you that we already have too.
The next thing under the budget are the projections, if you want to pull this one up. And this is what we are projecting right now when you look at the top increased expenses. 3 to 5% utility increase, 10% health increase, employee paid or employer paid portion. I'm not going to read them all off, but you can go through all of the items that we have on here that we think will have increased expenses, and the total's $260,985. I think we've estimated these accordingly, some of them probably high, which we want to do, obviously, so we're not under budget.
Really quick, I'm sorry, that is a 10% increase participation in 403B. I
10?
applied there, but it's actually 10%. So
Okay,
I did
we
get
will
that
change
too,
that.
so just so you
And
know.
what's the eliminate HP warranty reimbursement?
The,
It's the money that we receive right now that the high school is receiving when they repair our laptops.
Hewlett
And
Packard.
with the new system, right, we won't be receiving that money any longer because we won't be doing our own repairs.
and that was an income.
It was?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then decreased expenses, one of the big things is the $250,000 that we paid out of Ford last year, at the beginning of this year, $250,000. We have staff at $219,187. That is with the list that we have of resignations, retirements, all of those things, estimating what an average salary of somebody coming in replacing a retiree would be. Right now, we do not plan on filling one elementary position. The high school fax, one position, halftime library, one voc ed, and then in Mark's budget, a resource teacher, a functional teacher, and there'll be a reduction in force at the Hage Area Children's Center of, I think, .75 social worker there. And then we don't have classified positions, we won't be filling all of those. But this $219,000, I think, is pretty conservative in a sense that it may be a little more. I think we will still have more staff retire, resign. We have used a figure of $43,000 as a estimate what it would take to hire a replacement teacher. I'll give you an example. That some of the teachers that are leaving are retired with a lot of experience, a lot of degrees. Salary would be, here's one that $54,000, over $54,000 salary, and what we estimated estimated the replacement would be about $43,000, which is probably high, again, depending who you get, how much experience, so that's a savings of $11,000. Tracy has looked at, up above there, increase in the 403B, sick leave payout, all of those things are estimated, I think, high now. North Central Kansas Technical College contract, when I first started, we talked about that, I know, and they are not charging us a fee anymore, so that's a $35,000 savings there. Reductions in lieu of planning, there's at least two of those that we will be able to do away with and won't pay a teacher to work on their planning time, so that's another $10,000. And then repurposing Washington, first-year savings is what we're looking at, is about $216,000 for $731,000 savings that we have right now, or what we anticipate right now. The final budget, when you look at it, it looks like our, I say savings, but decreased expenses compared to increased expenses is about $460,000. Now, we're going to be looking at I'm trying to think of the good title for the technical, or instructional tech position that we had been talking about to help train teachers and make sure that we're using technology the way we would, but things like that we'll be looking at as we go. But this is where we are right now. Like I said, we will have some more retirements. I know we have one that's unnamed that I did figure in here. I don't know who it is, but they did notify Cheryl, since she's our Capers rep, and then I know she has some other visits from people. So my guess is we'll probably have more So right now, we're looking at the $460,000 difference in what we expended this year to next, so.
How does that factor in with the block grant?
This does figure in with the block grant. We're figuring, and this could change on the virtual school. We took $10,000 off in loss of state aid from that. The only other aid we lost was in the local option budget, which we can still collect. It just doesn't come in the form of state aid. So that's where we are. Was that, oh, did you have any other finance things? Under my report, the first thing I want to talk about is we have the Hayes NEA Spring Banquet is at Whiskey Creek. They are requesting an RSVP. Doors open at 6, and dinner is served at 6:30. This is to honor the master teachers and retirees. I think Greg and Lance were there. I don't know if any others were last year, but nice event. But if you are interested, make sure you let us know.
What was the date on that again, Dean?
It is May 5th. And we will be scheduling the district one that I think we did it down at the Rose Garden last year, where we hand out the bells and do a little special thing. So we'll be getting that date out as well. One thing that we need to discuss is tomorrow's their first negotiation session with HNEA. And I know you guys all got the email yesterday or over the weekend or something about the first meeting. And I know we had talked about this a couple months ago. I don't know exact date, but it's been a while about recording all of the board meetings, work sessions, everything, and that was to include the negotiation session since all the board members were invited and were noticing it. And I know NEA had sent an email yesterday or Saturday, sometime over the weekend, about the concern of having those meetings televised. I guess we need to have that conversation and talk about, because tomorrow we meet at 5:30, I believe, is the first meeting in this room. So your thoughts on that?
I guess I'm a little surprised, first of all, because as you said, I think we discussed this back in, I think it was a February board meeting, if I'm not mistaken, 2 months ago, as far as that we were trying to be more transparent. That was one of the things that we were beat up pretty good about over the past year and a half, that we were not being as transparent as possible. So we made the decision to start, filming and shooting the board meetings and anything that we were involved in, I guess, if you will. So I guess that was a little bit of surprise, and I think the comment they put in there that they were just now being notified of this. I know we haven't made this a secret. Since the get-go when we talked about this, we've talked about wanting to film it. So I guess I was a little bit surprised on that. I mean, I guess if we're trying to be as transparent as possible, I guess I have a hard time understanding what the hesitation to broadcast this would be. That's my personal opinion.
What are the major concerns being brought forth? Do they list their concerns?
Well, what the gist of it is saying that they would like to set the ground rules without the cameras. Consequently, the first meeting on the 14th, we wish to discuss this issue without the cameras running. It's, with the KOMA allows for taping, but does not specify broadcasting the recordings. So I know we had talked to Bill Jeter about that, and it's a board meeting, public meeting, and I don't think there's an issue with that. But I guess my question is, what do we do and expect tomorrow then at 5:30? I'd like to.
Well, if it's an open meeting, we notice there's a meeting, right?
Yep.
I've got to agree with Lance on what he said about opening up the transparency, because either way, it seems that we get beat up. We try to be transparent, and then they don't want us to be transparent, and then we're not transparent enough, so we try opening it up, but then that's too transparent. So at the end of the day, what is the definition of transparency?
I mean, everything we're discussing is public record, so
Yeah.
I don't,
So nothing different from the letter that was sent. You didn't hear anything new today? No new concerns?
just the email that was sent to all of you guys, yeah. So I will make sure they understand that, I mean, basically a board meeting, and we'll have the cameras on, and whether it's broadcast live or not, I don't know. I mean, that would be a question for Dan. I don't think it probably is, but I don't know. So-
I would just like to say, I mean, that is our desire and our wish, and we want those cameras to be on for transparency. If they feel strongly enough, then, you know, we need to make sure that the public understands that it was not on our behalf, that the cameras were not on, it was on theirs. And I'd like to make sure that everybody, public and all teachers, know that that's why we are not broadcasting those.
So I will let them know tomorrow that, I mean, that's the intent, that they will be, and I don't know how many of you guys are going to be here. Several, so. yeah. Okay. And then I do want to thank Greg, James, and Marty for the service. We'll have an official ceremony in June, but I appreciate everything that you guys have done, and want to congratulate Sarah, Luke, Mandy, and Paul for stepping up and serving. But we will get started with a whole new crew here shortly, or not whole new, but a lot of new faces. So.
Still new.
It's kind of scary when I started looking at that, who the most veteran board members have, I think, 2 years under their belt. That's probably a first for a lot of places. I don't know if that's happened, so we'll get through it. Yeah. Let's see, the next item then is the transportation update. Russ, do you want to come up and?
Do you want to go over this first, or with that?
Yeah, that's fine.
Are you leading that?
No, I thought you were. I was waiting for you.
You know how this
I'm still
works.
shuffling through my
We got this,
papers.
Russ.
I was involved a little bit, but very little in that. I mean, a year ago, you know, we talked about kids being on the bus a long period of time after school transfer. And I think Dean said if you had a wish list, you know, what we'd like to do for time. So we try to get it to where we adjust the times that we had a lot of the schools getting out at the same time. And I think Mark made a comment a year ago or so that transportation was set up dismissal times. Now times has changed, so maybe it's a time that we can relook at that issue. So we've got to put a draft together, you know, we thought would work with our busing. And then Dean's kind of taking it to, I believe, what admin cancel, and calendar people, and all the people, and we kind of, I think, came to an agreement maybe that some projected times for next year to start with dismissal times. You want to add to that, Dean?
But these are the projected, or the draft starting and ending times then next year. After we did approve the collaboration, I think 5 minutes total, we did adjust these by 3 minutes and 2 minutes. It didn't make a whole lot of difference, but I believe this schedule will help Russ and not have to have kids on the bus as long after we get out of one school and waiting for the next, so.
Any questions on that part?
Where are the big changes with the start and dismissal times?
Like, well, Washington and they got out at 3:20, but we should be able to do our transfer about 10 minutes quicker, but the high school's getting out quicker. The middle school's getting out a little bit later, but like Laughlin, Wilson, and Lincoln, we have buses that go to other schools besides those. But Roosevelt's getting out a little earlier than what they did this year, so we had some that were getting out later, some was getting out before 3 o'clock, some were getting out at 3:20. And we just had a big range of schedule there, but some kids were on the bus for half an hour just before we did our transfer. So we're trying to get that down, keeping them on the bus at a minimum. And this kind of allows us to do that.
So are most of these earlier start times then?
I'm sorry?
Are most of these earlier start times?
Yeah, we adjusted some start times at the beginning, also to kind of get them all, similar at the end of the day. And then they added a couple minutes at the end and 3 minutes at the beginning also.
Dean, is there a way to get this schedule out to all the parents, just so that way?
Sure, yeah, we will.
That they can have feedback and then at least take that into consideration.
We can post it, and, I mean, the principals, everybody will have it, and so, no.
Hey, Russ, I'm just curious, is there a reason why there's such a, like on the half-days between the high school and the middle school? Like, high school starts earlier and
High
gets out?
school does not do a half day, correct? High school does not do a half day. They go full day at the beginning and get out, they don't do that half day at the end.
Okay, I just saw the outside, it just looked like there was a fairly big discrepancy as far as times.
Any other questions? Okay, kind of step back to a year ago from now. Obviously, we was looking for a lot of money to save, and transportation was transporting anybody and anybody that wanted to ride the bus, a block or 10 miles. So to save money and to get all the FTE funding that transportation will out from the state, the board approved to go to only transporting 2.5 miles from the home to the school, which eliminated a lot of our transporting of students. By doing that, we shut down 4 routes, we eliminated 4 positions, and also along with that, our mileage reimbursement we dropped from 56 cents down to 17.5 cents a mile. And by doing all this, we had a projection of saving $114,500. That was what we put on the budget to project to save. With 9 months into our school year, with 3 months yet to go, project out, we should be way above that $114,500 savings. So, as you mentioned earlier, fuel's a big saver. The price of fuel down. We're going to the diesel in most of our buses, and that saves a lot of money. Everybody's being a little cautious of where we go, trying to be as efficient as we can in a lot of our trips, so a lot of that is part of it. With 4 less employees, a lot of our salaries, our benefits are way down, full-time positions, so a lot of that's a big savings. So granted, April, May are our 2 biggest months of the year with all the sporting activities, all the schools taking field trips and stuff like that. So this is our 2 busiest months, and then we got June yet too. So we still got 3 months to go, but right now, our budget's looking very well. And a lot of that has to do with the 2.5 mile that we went to this year.
Hey, Russ, does the 4 FTE drivers, does that count? You didn't replace one this year after you got started.
Yeah, but I lost 2 positions, and I did replace one. That's this
But is that
year.
4 or 5 then?
Well, we 4 last school year. From
And then
last year to
one this year, but one-
In the summer, we downsized 4 positions.
And then you dropped one this year as well?
Yeah, I dropped 2, but I had to add one
Right.
because he was a part-time, and he was working so many hours, we had to offer him the insurance, so.
Yeah.
So I dropped 2 this year, but it added 1, so
Yeah.
really, just minus
No,
1.
I thought there was another one, so.
Savings for next year, what just talked about, we did have a retirement this year, and we are not replacing that person. We're kind of absorbing some of those work duties. So this year we drop in another full-time position with benefits. Washington school closing, won't be a lot, but, you know, we got AM and PM transfers to run students there and back. Run peer tutors there on a daily basis and the Spark students, so there'll be some savings there that we won't have to transport down to Washington next year. And then Head Start, Don Hudson has decided to go to 2.5 mile like we did this year. They don't have to require transportation, but they're wanting to save some costs too, so they're going to go to 2.5 mile next year. And there's going to be some savings in the general fund side of that, and also on the transportation budget, there'll be some savings there that we'll have next year also. So, and we're kind of working on those numbers right now.
Now, when we discussed the Washington repurposing, I know that was one of the concerns that people had, is by closing a school in that area of town, we may be stranding some students, the ability to get to the school they need to. So, are we working on that as we place these kids in the new schools that we've...
I haven't had any requests, or Alan, have you had anybody talk about transportation to other schools?
There's been a concern about transportation because maybe a school that they're close to is closed, and they can't go to the other school across the town, and they still will qualify. They may have enough transportation or they only one car. So there have been some of those situations that we'll have to talk about, special circumstances.
Yeah, I mean, we have those, after we quit busing anybody that was over or under 2.5, I mean, that's all over, but do you have a number about, any idea?
How many families that?
Yeah,
now,
that have expressed
families
concern.
Okay.
That really have issues.
So we'll look at that, as we,
Yeah, I
as
just
we
want to
go
make sure
forward.
that
So,
we are
yeah,
not
but
ignoring that
he's
concern.
visiting
and that
about it.
we committed to, I think, looking at that issue, so.
Well,
I just wanna
looking
make
at,
sure we're not-
looking at what issue?
Well, that, Dean, I believe you said, in response to that concern, is that we would look at options for those students. That possibly they could get down to the bus barn and,
So we'll look at that, and the transfer is right, I mean, it's close to the school, so.
If they're walking to Washington, the bus barn's 2 blocks away.
it is. I just want to make sure that we are,
Yeah.
I feel like we made a commitment there, and I don't want to ignore that.
Russ, when does a reimbursement rate come up for renewal?
I'm sorry?
The reimbursement rate, when do we renew that or talk about that? Is that July?
We did that at the same time as we did the 2.5 mile about a year. They did it right at the same time about a year ago.
Okay, because I know that price was based off of
We
$3.50 a
saved
gallon.
approximately $10,000 per semester by having that savings. We'll see that other $10,000 probably in our second semester.
For some reason, I was thinking when we went through the initial stuff, the initial projections on that were approximately 140,000, I thought, were the initial savings on
No, I
that.
pulled it off the minutes of the board minutes, it was 114,500. That's on the roll on the report.
Okay. But you're thinking we should be over the...
We'll be over that, yeah, unless something
Right.
like that happens, that's projected out, we'll be above that.
Have you gone through the optimization of routes that we talked about at the beginning of the year
We
with
look
the
at that
fewer
on a constant
students and?
basis. Yeah,
Okay.
we're looking at it. We kind of make a few fine-tune adjustments, but not shutting down a whole route or anything.
Okay,
So,
okay.
yeah, the Train Finder was a software package we got about a year ago, and we're using that as part of it too, and we're using that, and it helps us look at those options too, so that is another tool.
Okay.
Looking at the big picture, and I know Russ is very cognizant about efficiencies and those things, just like you're saying now. Really, unless we want to not bus, I mean, if we wanted to try to save more money other than doing the efficiency things, and I think the philosophy down there is very good about looking at every option would be not to bus and pay mileage to everyone. We just purchased the vehicles, those things, so, unless we really get hard up, I wouldn't suggest we go that route. We've taken a beating already here, I think, we'll see, but I think we're doing a pretty good job there as far as being cost efficient. Can you think of anything else off the top of your head now? I mean,
Make great big jumps and figures like we have this year. There's always going to be places we can look and fine tune everything.
How much do we pay out in reimbursement for students coming to school, dollar-wise?
I don't remember off the top of my head. I don't have that.
Okay.
I know it was a $10,000 savings.
Versus the previous year?
6 cents down at 17 and a half cents.
Because I figured current fuel price is 11 cents per mile instead of 17. Pennies are pennies.
That previous one was based, like you said, on $3.50 a gallon.
Yeah.
And 6 months ago, we approved 2 cars, 2 Suburbans. Those are both now here in service. The route bus should be here within less than a month, and our wheelchair bus will be here this summer. So, update on that.
Anybody else got any questions for Russ?
Thank you, Russ.
Thanks, Russ.
Thanks, Russ.
Dean or Tracy talking about technology financing?
Tracy and, did Brian?
He went outside.
Yes, Tracy is.
So maybe Tracy starts.
Well, I can tell you about the bids we opened this morning. We did send out financing options. Here is the end of the hour.
You're on.
And we received responses from 6 respondents. The lowest interest rate for financing for an amount up to $745,000 for Apple devices was, the low bid was Apple Financial Services at 1.052% with no closing fee. And then the lowest interest rate for financing up to $551,000 for Microsoft and Mac devices was Bank of Hayes at 1.24% with no closing fee. To approve this Monday will just be for financing, just for the financing bank. You'll still have to approve any purchases that would come out of that money, but this would just allow us to have our financing in place. And then attached are the list of all of the different respondents who replied and their terms, and then also their actual bid responses. Other questions on the financing?
A little bit. So our total financing amount that we're looking at is $1,296,000. Is that right, between those two? I just added the 745 and the 551. So that's the total amount we're asking for?
Yes.
Okay, so then my question is, didn't we say that we had 400,000 budgeted this year available? So shouldn't that come out of that total?
Right, it will. And these are going to go into escrow accounts, and so we'll just pull it out as needed. It was hard to determine when we were sending out the bid. We will be using some of that funds from this year, but it was hard to determine what exactly would apply depending on how the bids came back. So like the total amount we sent out for bid was $1 million, and then anticipating spending that on top of it.
Okay, so that won't...
And these are up to, they are
Okay.
not locked into these amounts, so we don't have to pull all this and say, pull all that amount out of escrow.
Okay, but we won't... Okay, so what's next step after this? We approve this financing with these 2 financial institutions, or up to that amount.
Correct.
And then the next step is what?
Well, there's a couple of next steps, right? When we talk about the polishing plan and going forward, right? So what we've been working on, what we've been working on over the last week since we last talked, or 2 weeks ago, whatever that was. We've been working on getting the Apple inventory of our current, what's in the district. That's around 239 iPads. We're going to reuse 40 of those for the Learning Center, and we will be getting a quote back from Apple for the purchase of the rest of our devices that are version 1, version 2, that don't have some features that we want out of the newer devices. Apple's still working on getting that quote back to us. We are working on we met with Apple last week on the professional development side, getting the options for that and being able to outline that. I think we got a pretty good head start on where we need to go and what their options are. So that'll be ongoing. We've been writing the RFP for the high school devices. Hoping that will be finalized this week and be going out Friday, Monday for those bidders to respond. We've been spending a lot of time with Apple last week. Apple is down. We have to develop a plan for our implementation plan. Under 13 years old, you have to have a parent create your Apple ID. So we're going to need to set up kind of a trial run still this year. And pick maybe one of the middle school classes to find out how that's going to be forward. If not, we're going to be doing it over the summer or August. We need to make sure that our game plan is pretty solid before kids come back. So we have these IDs created. Apple's also working on building us, or they have the ability to build in some implementation time to come and help us. So they're also looking at those resources of what they can help us with. Because that's 2,100 devices. Kind of large. They want to make sure we go to that as well. So working with our sales guy and our engineer on that. Management software. We're going to look at implementing our management software sooner than later so we can get the training out of the way and start testing with some of the devices. Apple says we can bring the devices in, they're under warranty. Warranty starts the day the box is cracked. So we can bring them all in whenever, but until the box is cracked, when the warranty kicks in. So we're going to be doing some testing with the management software, making sure we have those kinks worked out, because as you know, we have, with the high school stuff coming up, shortly after, we kind of got to keep a lot of balls in the air and judging while we're going through the summer.
That's the 1-year manufacturer's warranty?
Yeah, 1-year manufacturing warranty. I'll have some options for you guys for the self-insured. How that, I don't know when you guys want to see that. If you guys want to see that at the next board meeting, if you guys want to see kind of what we have drawn up, have some options. Really getting some idea from other districts and how they're doing their self-insurance and finding out what their failure rate is or what their breakage rate is. Not hearing a lot K-5, middle school where we kind of got to figure it out, so it's going to have a decision to take on where that's.
Are there devices going home with them?
They are not going home this first year.
No, but with the middle school.
No.
Well, in those, but in those other districts, when you're saying the failure rate in the
Yeah,
middle schools are.
it's a mix, it's a blend. Some of them started not going home and they turned out going home. They changed that throughout their process, but it's something that we need to definitely look at. Or we're not going home this year for this, and we'll reassess as we go. And I think that's kind of about Shannon, Mark, Steve, Tracy.
But I think what you were saying is insurance and all the damage. You do know, we're talking Apple, more middle schools move towards that at some point or some are, so I would think that's also an insurance side. But we haven't made a decision. We need to get the instruction at the level we want it to go before we would then consider that. It would have to be justified by, it's limiting what we can do in the classroom because the school is going home. And those are the things that, down the road, if everything falls into place, that would be a great thing to present to you. That everything's working, and teachers are where they are, but we're not obviously there yet. There's some question marks.
And Apple, our meeting last week, Apple's got the survey.
Yeah, well, and this came in the board, that's just what the update is, there's an educational technology needs profile that I started looking at, have the link, we'll have teachers take that here at the end of April. That's more aggregate data. I've been looking at some tech plans. We have to submit our tech plan to the state. There's a whole rubric with all the pieces that we've talked about, and we'll bring that back to you. But we want something more personal. I want that teacher to fill something out and say, okay, here's where I am, and they can set a goal from there, and the administrative and building support, we can support that. The profile just gives us more of a snapshot view. There is a building leader profile that go along with that, and we definitely want to have our building leaders do that so that we're all growing in that area. But I know LOTI was one that I looked at over the weekend, and so we have a few other inventory, personal inventory we'll be looking at as well.
I think also, like Shannon brought this morning, talking to her, that our old tech thing was built around products, not around what we wanted to do. So, and it gives us a chance to kind of reassess what we want to do with the visual learning plan and move forward. So,
Yeah, and it's not one of the parts of the rubric or what we have to turn into the state was evaluating our last plan and looking at that, it was all about device or software. It wasn't about student learning. So that's something I think we're making huge strides with the goals. And there are actually some required goals that the state puts in, but like we talked, that tech committee, how it looks needs to stay active. The instructional tech specialist will chair that. That will be an ongoing committee that pulls the measures, looks at things, and continues to give updates. So that will be the basis for how we move forward.
we've got kind of quite a bit going on in different ways as well as trying to kind of finish out the school year with staffing, trying to be available for that.
So we have 199 iPads that we intend to
sell.
Some of those are...
Some of them are first generation iPads, some of them are, but the majority of them are first generation iPads.
Well, what about all the ones we purchased, the 150 we purchased?
Those are not in those numbers in 239. 239 is what they purchased before my existence. Not my existence, but my existence here.
What about the ones that were purchased by Washington and Laughlin this year?
We got all that in there.
Okay.
We got the student machine, so remember, we're talking students, right?
Right.
Our pilot, we pulled those iPads back from the high school.
Okay.
We're repurposing them into the staff that we didn't get.
Okay.
There was one in school that also helped out with that. We're talking student devices at this point. When we're talking Apple, we're not going to be short staff devices. The only ones that haven't accounted for is 4 iPads.
And what's the reason we're actually selling the other iPads?
They don't support the AirPlay, some of the functionality that teachers want to use in their classroom. So it's hard to put 20 of these into this classroom, 20 of them in that classroom. And plus, we've asked Apple to give them a price on what we can get for them. We don't have to sell them.
I'm just curious.
Yeah, the functionality is the biggest reason. Plus, if you have, in my mind, you could have a couple of years and then iOS, whatever comes out, and the 2 don't support it, I'd like to keep everything on the same things where we're not having to shuffle around and make things work. So, and we can see what Apple gives us, we can go to Gazelle, we can do numerous other things, we just want to start with that because, So,
wouldn't we want to give the opportunity for the taxpayers here to buy them back at that same price?
we could.
I mean, they're the ones that paid for them.
Yeah, we definitely could. And that's, yeah, we're just trying to find out what Apple values in that. But I don't see any reason with that. I don't see a problem with that either.
On Monday, I mean, next Monday then, Brian, what do we need to bring back then? And
Well, where do we want to head from here? Are we ready to move forward with an Apple purchase? Are you guys ready for that to come to you guys? Or are you guys wanting some, I mean, this is...
Well, some numbers would be nice.
The number for Apple?
Yeah, did they give you the bid yet for the machines?
730, 928, maybe plus or minus $10.
Okay.
So 740?
when will they know? When we
730?
731. That would be,
For how many machines?
that's for the, no, I knew you were going to ask me that.
2,000.
716 minis, 1,350 regular items. You got to remember, that's also excluding the current inventory of minis we have in our district and iPads that we currently have.
So what is that, a mini, and what is that, an iPad? Did they
Well,
say? Did
is
they
that
break it
what's
down?
on here?
Seven,
on there.
It's on there.
274 for a mini and 374 for an iPad.
Okay.
You've got 279, 379 on this thing that we got sent.
That's for the individuals. You buy the 10-pack, they're $5
Yeah,
cheaper.
you get a break in 10-pack. But we'd be looking at 731 for the high school Magis's lab. That's 21 desktop, or 21 desktop replacements, and then the iPads. And like I said, that's also reusing current inventory we have of new iPads that we can repurpose those.
And
Have you picked a computer for the high school yet?
We have, that RFP will be going out Friday or Monday.
And why is that?
Why?
But what brand is that?
Oh, we don't know.
Oh.
And we'll send it out to various vendors and have them respond back to the specs that we came up with. I'm assuming that would be the 16th board meeting, work session, 14, 16, somewhere in there. The lot rain, it's early May. I believe.
Two questions I had. You asked if we're ready to go forward with the iPad. My first question, do we have another option? Other than going forward with the iPad, it's just a matter of which version, right?
Yeah, at this point.
And then the second is on the high school, I mean, why are we doing an RFP with specs on that, but we didn't at the elementary and middle? Well, at the elementary and middle, we pick devices. At the high school, we're sending an RFP out based on specs of what we need.
We're sending out a Windows RFP though, with specs of a Windows platform. I mean, I guess that's different. We're not sending out an RFP for tablets for feedback what they want to Apple for their teaching tool.
So Monday, this will be on the agenda again, and, I mean, do they need to approve? I mean, will there be anything for them to approve, or
If they
what?
want to approve the Apple purchase, we can approve the Apple purchase, but if we don't, I mean, that's the only thing that we have that would be, that's the only thing we have approval, ready to be approved, and that's.
Okay, but they do need to approve the financing option here, so then.
Yeah, considering that the
Okay.
agenda item before me.
Okay. All right, and then we'll give an update on where we are with tech plan and those things and see.
Yeah, I mean, we
with
can talk to you every.
hiring and doing everything, I mean, it's just mad, so.
When are we anticipating the final draft for the plan?
As soon as possible. I mean, yeah, we want to be done tomorrow, but with everybody interviewing now and doing all these things, I mean, we're doing as fast as we can.
Sure.
But,
And I'm not-
and we want to do it right. No, I know,
Yeah.
but we want to do it right. This is the, yeah.
We want to go through all the policies that have to do with anything in technology, so, I mean, we kind of know it's there, but we want to make sure with the new digital learning plan, we have all that. Then there's a piece on the mission vision. A lot of this is already in that plan, just putting the narrative, assessing your infrastructure goals and objectives, we'll complete that. You set goals, you write a narrative, you put the way you're going to measure it. It's long, there's a lot of curriculum integration, we already have some of that, just plugging it in. And I've already started a draft. This is just the blank rubric. And then we took technology professional development piece, and then kind of the verification for E-rate purposes, the budget. And this is what the final document will look like before we come to you, that you'll at least be aware of before we have the action item on this. And that's what we'll send it to the state and move forward with everything, so.
And you're gonna have the insurance piece that's about worked out?
It's pretty much worked out. I just didn't have a chance to get it out to you guys today. At E-rate, I just had a lot of other stuff that had to be done as well.
What's about?
As we look at fee structures, I mean, what do you, I mean, does everybody think it's appropriate then to have a K-8, or, well, we have 9-12 technology fee now, but to have a K-8 technology fee, or are we barking up the wrong tree? I think we do to have some accountability. And then we were talking about a plan that if the parent wanted to buy the device, and I don't know, that's a whole nother road to go down, but if they wanted to buy the device, how that would look, and there are several things we need. But what are your thoughts?
Well, if they're not taking the devices home and they're simply in the classroom, then I don't know why we would be charging a technology fee. Well, the high schoolers have been taking theirs home though. And that's where your risk is.
$30 isn't covering the risk.
Well, but that's why we need to look at that.
Are they going to have the same iPad K through, is it K through 5 has minis or K2?
I wouldn't expect the iPad to move with them.
Well, K2 will be a mini. Anyway.
So they wouldn't have the exact same machine for 3 years?
They would change. They'd be changed for
How are we paying for the insurance policy?
be self-insured. I think we need to.
But does that come out of the general fund?
Options, but I think you also got to look at your options on breakage, right? The other thing we hadn't talked about is, refining the district's expectations of our devices and use and what they're going to be done with, and repercussions for things that are done, right? So we're going to be meeting with principals and talking about that as well. And I think I wouldn't plan for a lot of breakage. They're not going home myself, but you're always going to have those ones that do break. If you guys want to come to something's going to happen, accidental or not, right? But I think we need to make sure we think all the way through this before we say no. And I think you guys, I'll put a spreadsheet together of what I pulled from other districts and just ideas. And you guys can, like I said, if you like it, you don't like it. It's already first discussion.
The key question for me is I would want to know from those other districts, are they going home? If they're not going home, how much movement is there during the day? Are they taking them into different classrooms? Are they putting them in their lockers? I mean, that kind of gets to your risk, in my opinion.
No, I agree.
For breakage.
Yeah.
So,
That's why I've been looking at this. We haven't jumped into the fee thing yet because we're still trying to gather the data. Is it necessary?
Okay.
What is the breakage? So, but yeah, and then also trying to find what cases they have versus what they recommend. And there's a lot of pieces and parts that it's just the cases, right?
Right.
This district says this case is great, this one is not. So just trying to get the sifting through all the figure out
Has there been any thought to create a tiered system? First time, a kindergartner's probably going to drop it. That's a given, but when it happens repeatedly, what's going to happen then?
3 strikes, you're out.
3 strikes?
I'm assured by the Apple reps that showed us the case that they had down here on Wednesday that you could drop it as much as you want. And the Apple let me drop theirs, I was going to do it. I didn't feel right.
How much was that case?
It was a test, but they swear.
How much was that particular case?
How much was it? I think it's $29. Buy it through Apple, it's an SDM case, typically around $50. Apple sells them through the education deal for $29. So.
well, we've had some of these at some of the schools,
Yeah,
in
we
the elementary level,
yeah,
right?
We have a lot of them.
Right.
The Lieutenant Wilson, and we haven't had any.
Yeah.
So I think what we're doing over there is okay, right? I guess it's just making sure we outline all the possibilities.
Sure.
To make sure that if we do have breakage, it's $100 a device, and it's a mailing service. Whether we want to set aside some money for that for the first year and see how that goes. It's all just talking points, and we can probably work through that in the next work session.
Okay.
Yeah, we're good.
I'm good. Any other questions for Brian? All right, thanks, Brian.
Thanks, Brian.
Okay, the next item is just real quick that we will have a couple resolutions of non-renewal of staff. One will be a reduction in force because of the loss in funds at the Hayes Area Children's Center. And then we'll read those two resolutions. Sarah will deliver the notice to the teachers and go through that process. The next one I just wanted to, I think I put this in the memo, was new board member training. There's actually a session in Hayes on May 30th. That is a Saturday. I mean, it's for a existing board member, it's $25. If you haven't gone through it or done it, I think it would be worthwhile. And if anybody's going to go and you want me to be there, I'll be more than happy to go. But there's one on the 30th in Hayes. The next one that's probably as close is at Oakley, and that is April 29th. But just let Sarah know if you're interested in attending that, and we will get you signed up, or whoever wants to go. And then there's opportunities for new board, or not new board, for whole board training as we start with the new board members and retreat and those things. I think it's important that we sit down and do the goal setting and those things. Several options there, whether it's KASB, Southwest Plain. I mean, there are a whole gamut of things that we can do, but I think that's important as well. And then board president / vice president training. I don't know, with our vice president not running, we'll have to start over with president and vice president, so there's training for that as well. But I just wanted to bring that to your attention. As we get these dates, we'll keep sharing those. The next item is the Fort Hays State Lewis Field Agreement. Sarah's been working on that. Fort Hays State said that they would sit down with us if we wanted to do an extended contract. They say they have no intention of raising the rate, which is $2,400. If we want to do that, we would sit down with TNP, Fort Hays, and ourselves and look at that and try to negotiate an extended contract. But it's been $2,400 for a long time, and I know Bruce Rupp just shared with me the other day that they had their one and only home tennis tournament, and Hayes actually did it for them. Concessions, bathrooms, everything, and he said the kids thought it was just wonderful, and it was pretty cool. They got done in a few hours, and it was amazing. So they don't charge us for the track when we use that. The track meet that I don't know if TNP hosts or Fort Hays hosts, but they work with us on everything really well. So if you want us to sit down with them, we'd be more than happy to, but I think the $2,400 is what it's been, and I think they're going to continue that fee structure. The next item is the board policy CG, administrative personnel. And as I sit here and read this, we had talked about changing the names, the renewal of the contracts for Director of Curriculum, Director of Learning Center, Director of Early Childhood Connections, Director of Hayes Area Children's Center shall be determined the first regular meeting, and it says May. I think what my intention was to leave that in March with the principals. If we do May, I definitely need to do some work with them. I know that is something I've heard from a few that happened to look at this already, that I thought that was going to be March. That was what I thought it was. I would like to just change it to March and then have it on the agenda for approval, but I need your go ahead to do that. And what the non-certified directors was May. Do you want me to make that change and bring it back, or? And then, I mean, you'll have to vote to approve it, but we will do that and then have
Clean up
that
the
discussion.
typos?
Do what?
clean up the typos? In red,
Oh, yeah, yeah,
we got director for the third time misspelled.
yeah. Yeah, what I'm looking at is the, more of the.
Oh, okay.
It's, yeah, it's,
All right.
the yes, that'll happen. That is all I have. Other topics for discussion?
Anybody have any for next board meeting? All right, Dean, and you did want an executive session, correct?
Yes.
Still an hour, or?
Let's try to get through that a little quicker.
Okay.
If we need it, let's do 30 minutes.
Okay.
And I'll hold your feet to the fire.
And then who do you all want to include in there?
They're wanting to probably go home, but Shanna, Mark, Tracy.
Okay. All right, so I will make a motion to enter into,
Get your kids.
all right, I will make a motion to enter into executive session for a period of 30 minutes to discuss negotiations, beginning at 9:50 PM to come back at 10:20 to include all members of the Board of Education, the Board Attorney, Superintendent, Director of Finance, Curriculum Director, and Assistant Superintendent of Special Services. Second by Board Member Patterson.
Yes.
Call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Motion carries 7-0.